Perfect.
It's good.
All right, yeah, let's dive right in, man. Again, thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, I looked you up. You've done a ton of verticals, and you said now you have an agency that deals with specifically vertical talent.
I do, yeah. So I started verticals. I got very lucky in that I was working as an accountant. So I have an accounting degree, and then very early 2023, my partner applied for just a random acting project on a Facebook post. We didn't know anything about it. I'd never really done any professional acting, just kind of theater stuff in school. I did drama class, that kind of thing. Um, did the audition, and they ended up booking me, and that turned out to be the very first vertical they shot in Australia. So none
Wow.
of us knew what verticals were, or how to act for them, or any of the nuances, or where it was going. The story was insane. It was
What
very,
was it, if
very
you don't mind me
crazy.
asking?
It was kind of like, my character, his name was Christian, if I remember correctly, and his parents died in a plane crash, and he was like a billionaire, of course, as
Of
tends to
course.
run in these
Yeah.
in these kind of projects. And so, in order to get revenge on the pilot, so the pilot got drunk, crashed the plane, killed his parents. That all happens
Oh.
in kind of the before the story begins. So what my character decided to do was take the 6 year old daughter of the pilot, who's now an orphan, adopt her, and then when she was 18, force her to have his child and to marry him.
Whoa.
Yeah, all the while he is fake dating her sister or half sister, and using her half sister as a bit of a I don't know, competitive comparison. So he's dating like both the daughters of the pilot who killed his parents. Um, and then a few things happen. There's a miscarriage, a car crash, the classic soap
Of
opera kind of
course.
like insanity arc. And they're all happily ever after. At the end, she realizes that he was just controlling because he loved her so much. And yeah, it's a very
Wow.
great example for my future kids.
How does that? How do you, like, when you get projects like these? I mean, how do you wrap your head around them? Like, do you enjoy it? Are you a little apprehensive about taking these parts? Like, because
Yeah.
in my head, like, you hear ramifications of taking certain projects on, like, with this being, a drug pilot and, a young girl, and then, you know, some people might see it as like grooming or something like that. You know what I
Yeah. Well,
mean?
that was my first thought when I read it.
Hmm.
That was it was a terrible story, and I think that the one thought that got me through it at the time, and I've since kind of changed my way of looking at them, but at the time, the one thought that got me through was, I've never been an actor before. I didn't think acting was
Mm.
possible, and the fact that someone was not only willing to allow me to act, but then pay me to act, I was very green, and so I kind of was just like, you know what, whatever it is, we'll just make sure that on the day and when we're actually performing, everyone feels as safe as possible. And there were a lot of check-ins between the cast. We became very close, and made sure that we're all okay every time like cut was called. But in terms of just getting through it, it really was just this. I was in this fantastical reality where I'm able to just work as an actor, which I
Mm.
always wanted to do, but I didn't think was like an actual career path that people were able to just go and do. I thought it had to be something that you were born into the industry, or you're a child actor, or you had a famous parent or something like that. And I had no connections with the industry. I walked onto set feeling like a complete fraud. I couldn't even believe that they'd booked me, let alone were wanting me as the lead. And so it very much was just all of that other stuff was kind of secondary to the fact that someone was allowing me to be an actor. And that's how I got through it on the day.
Wow. And how did your training? Because you said you studied theater, right?
Mm.
How did that training, like, correlate to being on one of these sets? With sometimes they ask for different kinds of performances. Were you at all, like, blown away by the stylized choice of these?
Well, I had quite an interesting experience getting into these because given that I was on the first vertical they shot in Australia, and this was early 2023, so it was around the same time that every country was really having their first couple verticals being shot. So there wasn't really any proper direction or um, instruction given on how to act. So I see kind of that first vertical as everyone from the crew to the director to the cast, everyone was kind of just figuring it out. We all kind of saw the story as just something that was going to be quite a challenge to pull off and do realistically. So we kind of did our best with that. But I think that it very much was that there wasn't really any rule book at the time.
Mm.
Whereas nowadays, and we're sitting like early 2026, nowadays there's a bunch of tutorials out there. There's a whole bunch of content, heaps of data that supports certain choices over others. And there's heaps of people you can ask for advice. Because at the time, vertical acting wasn't a thing. Verticals weren't a thing. But nowadays, like there's certainly different avenues you can go through for coaching or understanding what makes a vertical different to traditional film. But on what you mentioned there about theater, what I've found, I think I've done 40 something verticals at this point, 30 or so of them leads. And I found that verticals are a bit of a mix between theater and social media. I think a lot of people
Mm.
get it a bit wrong when they compare it to Netflix or they compare it to modern cinema. These shows are designed to have the clickbait hook and cliffhanger that we see in social media. It's very, very similar to that. And the acting style is very over the top, it's very projected because it kind of begs for your attention consistently throughout the entire vertical. It's begging for you to keep watching, and that kind of takes out all the nuances and the drawn out moments that you might otherwise get in film. So from a theater perspective, it's very much that kind of projecting out, which I found was very helpful when I first got into it because I'm not screen trained at all. I'm somewhat trained, I guess, from classes I've taken since. But when I first got into verticals, I only had a bit of a theater background, and that actually served as an advantage when I got into it because
Mm.
I treated it like a theater show or like an improv kind of theater show. And I think that helped me kind of hit those bigger beats that the story was asking for, whereas a screen actor might try and internalize those emotions and make it more kind of realistic.
Hmm. And I mean, lately I've been seeing a big push to. I mean, there's different kinds of apps, obviously. You know, it seems like Drama Box is very much that kind of stylized theater social media take. And I was just watching Candy Jar, and theirs are a lot more grounded. It seems. What are your thoughts on them?
I love it. I think it's great. I think that when it comes to and Jen from Vertical Drama Love, she's the kind of the biggest fan account
Hmm.
on Instagram at the moment. I'm not sure if you've interacted with Jen, but she's fantastic. Love her. She recently put a post out yesterday to that point of where there are a bunch of apps just coming out with bigger and stronger and more intense stories of more of like a dark or violent or abusive nature, and they're doing that for a very good reason from a business perspective, which is that that kind of content sells on social media. Those violent and very kind of like shocking pieces of content, they perform well because that is just the nature of social media. You're scrolling, you see something that shocks you, you're going to watch it.
Hmm.
And I think that from that business perspective, that's why a lot of the apps have gone that way, because at the end of the day, they're looking for profit, they're looking for views, and those metrics tend to perform better in that style of content. But in terms of what Candy Jar's doing, I think it's fantastic. From a total industry perspective, when verticals get to the point, and they're starting to get there now, I don't think they're completely there yet, but when verticals get to the point that it is entirely mainstream to watch a vertical, you're going to have like a separation of all these different kinds of content. You're going to have the people that watch verticals just for the shock content, but then they're going to get desensitized to that and they're going to seek something more, whether that is action or a thriller or even sci-fi. Many apps have put out a couple of little testers. I think Real Short recently did like a reality show as well.
Oh
So we're
yeah, yeah, I heard
seeing,
about that.
yeah, we're seeing kind of an expansion of the genre because the audience is getting bigger and the audience is becoming more of the like a better cross section of society as a whole, as opposed to one little part of the total potential kind of viewer market. So I think Candy Jar is ahead of the game in that respect. I think that that's definitely going to become more wanted, more valuable. And if you look at any of the feedback from the fan accounts, I know I mentioned Jen, but this is across the board of all the fan accounts that exist on Instagram that I keep up with. It is that they constantly campaign for less violence, less kind of
Mhm.
abuse, and that kind of horrific stuff. And these are the fans that are really committed to watching verticals. These are the fans that are watching like 2 or 3 verticals a day. That's like 3 hours of content, and sometimes even more. There, some of those fans I've spoken to have watched more than like 2,000 verticals. That's a lot of time
Wow.
that they're
And
spending, and
money.
I can, yeah, exactly right, and it all comes back to that profit centric data that the businesses are kind of going for. But if those people are willing to spend the money and care about a certain series having less violence or less harassment, Candy Jar, for example, is one of the platforms that they're going to go to and they're going to stick with because they can trust that that abuse is not going to be as prevalent.
Yeah, they're kind of like a great mesh between the two worlds, it seems like, from like the TV film world and the vertical world. Like, I mean, I've seen a couple crazy titles come up, and like I think
The
something about like
titles.
my,
Oh.
yeah, like my stepbrother or like my stepsister and me fall in love, or like, or
Yeah.
and to your point, yeah, it just seems like these are getting so extreme. And I was talking to a producer over at Drama Box, and they were saying like these are kind of like mostly aimed at women 25 to like 45. Am I correct?
Yeah,
And it
that's what I
almost
was mentioning
seemed,
with the smaller cross section. Absolutely right.
and it seems like, I mean, I've heard this from a few people involved in verticals. It's almost like this is like the extreme versions are almost leaning towards like almost like softcore pornography, like with the amount of sex scenes and things like that. How do you, as an agent, like keep like your actors safe in those regards? Like, do you recommend them to do these things? Like,
Mm.
I only asked this
I,
because I had Jameson on the other week, and she was like I think 19 when she first started doing these, and that can be like a lot of pressure to put on
it's
someone
huge.
that young.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing that we do is a reference check.
Mhm,
So making sure that the producer doesn't have any black marks or commentary around them, and if
mhm,
they do, obviously, kind of exploring that or and giving kind of the talent that information. Beyond that, from like a project specific perspective, especially with the female roles, making sure that all intimacy is clearly outlined before we sign the contract. That is a
mm,
huge thing. Now, and often we'll get kind of a response of, oh, well, the script isn't ready, the script isn't fully translated, and things like that. And that can be fair commentary. Sometimes that is said just to push the problem to later. But so often I've heard of, especially the actresses, the lead actresses, being pushed on set well past their boundaries, and that's not on. Like that's just not a thing that should ever be happening. So making sure that all the boundaries are clearly outlined in writing, and making sure that we also support the actresses and actors as well. But I think reasonably speaking, they typically have. And I'm an actor myself, so
yeah,
I
been
can
before,
say that
yeah.
comparatively, like the female leads, they go through far worse,
Mhm.
and much more intense and compromised kind of positions. So we mainly focus on the actresses. Um, but making sure everything's in writing, and also supporting them, making sure that they know. I always say this, even like before someone signs with us. I say, if you ever have a problem on set where you've set a boundary or a boundary wasn't discussed and that gets pushed and you do anything that's uncomfortable or unsafe, call me. And it doesn't even matter if you're one of my talent or you're not one of my talent. That level of safety is like a very big and important thing to me. As a kind of side note, my partner Rachel, she's looking to get into this industry, and it is upsetting to me that I had to say to her that I'm worried that for her to go into this industry, um, I would worry that she would be unsafe,
Mm,
because not every producer is going to do bad things, but I have seen it happen. I have heard about it happen, and I think that it's very difficult to keep yourself protected on set. So I do take that very very seriously, from a personal level when I'm on set, but also obviously as an agent, as a representative. But on a much lighter note and a better note, I think an agent has a certain level of authority in being a third party to what's happening on set. And I think when used effectively and used well, oftentimes when a boundary is pushed, whether it's intimacy, stunts, or just anything in general, an agent is able to come in and be the bad guy or the bad girl. I'm not meaning to generalize there, but to be the bad person, I should say,
mhm,
where the talent can maintain a positive relationship with the crew, the director, and the producers, whereas the agent can come in and say, "Hey, this is not what we agreed. Fix it," and really push that. Because when you're on set, it's very confrontational. It's very difficult to actually speak up and say, "Hey, I'm not okay with this." If an actor is confident and able to do that, fantastic. But oftentimes, especially when they're getting kind of pushed in that respect, it is a bit easier for the actor actress to come to me and say, "Hey, can you give him a call and just fix this?" And that's kind of where I think the agent comes in from a different level that can assist, making sure that those things we agreed to beforehand, those
mhm.
questions that we had answered in the very beginning before we got to set, are actually adhered to. That's kind of where we sit on that.
And I know that like SAG is obviously trying to get involved in these, and I've talked to a few producers on that regard and their thoughts on that. But what are your thoughts? I mean, I know there's a lot of people wondering if these can be made for the budgets they are if SAG gets involved. But like we talked about, I mean, there's a certain layer of protections that come for the actor when they get involved. Are you for or against the union getting involved?
Overall, I'm for. I think the challenge I have in answering that question is I don't have much interaction with SAG,
Mm,
being an Australian actor. Um, so I don't have any personal experience with it. But from what I hear, SAG is out there to be a force for good, and they're very effective in what they do in general. The question that you raised was quite geared towards the budget, and I do think that that's something that needs to be nuanced, and given kind of the attention that it deserves. These are not multi-million-dollar projects, and it is really hard to compare them to those projects because the way that they're shot, the way that the money runs, in terms of the who's getting paid what and all of it, it's a very different environment. So I think that the challenge will be, and SAG is kind of already on top of this. I think they're currently negotiating an agreement, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they have an agreement, but
Okay.
I think a lot of the production companies like Real Short, Drama Box aren't using
Mm,
or aren't choosing to use SAG talent. They're using to just they think they have a business model that works very efficiently with non-union talent where
mm.
they feel like they don't need names involved in their projects. I know Candy Jar has been with I know they brought over an actor. Um, I think it was Tay Diggs. Um,
Yes, I heard. Yeah,
yeah,
this was all
all
over
over
my
vertical
feed.
feed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that rings a bell. Yeah.
But again, it seems like some of these companies, especially ones based outside the US, are just, they feel like they have a formula that works and they're just sticking to that.
Yeah, and I don't think they're wrong
Hmm.
from like a business side of things. I think that verticals, I always saw them in terms of the industry mix. I saw they used to be pre-verticals. You would do a student film or an unpaid indie feature, and that would kind of be like not getting paid, but doing the work. Then hopefully you get noticed by an agent or a casting director, and then you leapfrog a massive gap into like studio kind of guest star stuff. Maybe you do like extras work, but like there was a massive gap between not getting paid at all and then suddenly
Hmm.
you get paid union rates and healthcare and all that stuff, which is just fantastic. Verticals kind of fit that middle ground where they exist not in a space like doing one vertical isn't going to kind of set you up for life. It's not like $1 million payout, but it is good money for what it is. And it serves a value to those actors and the cast and crew that you can actually be paid to do the work in your industry as a sorry, pardon me, as opposed to going to I don't know, a retail or a serving job where it's kind of just casual work and you're just writing that out so you can pay rent so that next week you can attend a few more auditions. And I feel like having verticals in the middle is really valuable in that respect. So from an actor's perspective, I have found it life changing to quit accounting, quit my corporate job, and I do verticals full time, which
Wow.
is just it's an insane concept to be able to work as an actor. If you recall me saying when I first got into this, I didn't think acting was even like a real career. You had to like
Mm.
be born into it. I didn't think you could work your way into it. Um, so I think that from the union perspective, to kind of bring that all back, the union does a lot of great work, and the union is fantastic in providing protections for actors and cast and crew alike. Um, but verticals having to adhere to all the existing union guidelines, it creates a lot of red tape. And until the current vertical model stops working, I don't think they have much incentive to sign on to what the union has to offer. Because from a production perspective, if all the union is offering the production is, and I may be mistaken with this, I haven't read the agreement, so I'm not entirely qualified to talk about this just before I say something
No,
out of
yeah,
my
no, no, no,
station.
no worries.
But if from a production perspective, if there is no reason for them, like no incentive for them to sign on to the union agreement, they're not going to do it.
Hmm.
There's no need for them to do it. I feel like under the current agreement, because the current system works. As you said, they've come out and they've said um, they have a business model right now. That business model is working, continuing to work. And I think while actors are trying to bridge the gap from unpaid indie features or student films all the way up to studio, verticals do hit that kind of medium in the middle where they can work, earn money, and be working in their chosen field as well. So there will be plenty of actors who haven't yet qualified for the union that will constantly be able to join the vertical industry for a few years and then hopefully use that to get into the union and then leave the vertical industry. If that's kind of how the cookie crumbles, if the union isn't really able to have that many vertical projects going on, that's kind of where I see things going.
It's really fascinating because I think I brought up the figure on another podcast, but it's about like 90% of SAG doesn't qualify for healthcare. So you
Oh,
have
I've
like
heard
a
that.
hundred,
Yeah.
yeah, 170 people, 170,000 people in the union, yet they're not making, I think it's like $28,000 a year from acting.
Wow.
Where, like you said, like this is like the perfect bridge for those who are, not at that level. Obviously, being in SAG, these are non-union, so you'd either have to go FICOR or something to do them. But I feel like they provide such a value to these young actors, to, like you said, like pay their bills or not have to, like Jameson was working two jobs before she started doing verticals. And also just the amount. I don't know if you can speak on that, but it seems like I auditioned for them, and it seems like there's at least 7 new ones a day I can audition for or submit myself for. Like the amount that they are producing at one time is insane.
To that point, Australia is much smaller, much
Okay.
smaller. Most projects I've been involved in have been abroad.
Mhm.
Um, so I was lucky to get my start in Australia, but yeah, the industry in Australia is pretty small. We maybe make in Sydney, I would say we'd be pushing it to make more than 20 in a year.
Okay.
That was roughly what we did last year. Melbourne, there's a little bit going on, but they're probably sitting on 10, 15. I think LA does that in 2 weeks
Yeah,
by
LA is
comparison.
crazy.
So yeah, I have heard all of this because I've worked with some wonderful American actors that have told me how incredible the industry is over there. But yeah, from an Australian perspective, I don't think there's many of us that are able to do it full time over here. Um, but some there's a lot of international kind of um, connections that allow some of us to, but locally it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have China right there, and I know that they produce quite a few um,
Yep,
at home, right?
yep, and we've got yeah, good connections with them, which is really helpful.
And so for your
Because
clients,
China, I
what?
mean, is the sorry.
Oh, sorry, you please you go.
I was just going to say that well, China is kind of the birthplace of this kind of content. A lot of the projects that we do, sometimes like they'll show a reference of the Chinese version that's already been released
Mm.
as kind of like a shot reference, and be like, oh, we want a shot just like this, or we want the episode to look like this, or we want your reaction like this, um, which I found pretty interesting as well. So going over there and learning and understanding how they make it was actually really a very helpful and useful experience from a just understanding the industry and why it is where it is today.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to the drama box, and they were saying it's like I think it was like 30% of the entertainment economy. These verticals are just like so popular there.
Yeah, it's
But going
huge.
back to you as an agent,
Mm,
I was talking to Jameson about it too, but it seems like they have a very specific type that they look for in
yeah.
their actors. Um, and I'm wondering if you could speak on that. Like when you're taking on a client, it seems like there's a lot of, I don't want to say superficial, but like there's a lot of, it seems like they really love very tall men, very young women. Um, Obviously everyone's got to be jacked, like great jawline, it seems. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you look for, or how do you feel about this in general? Is there a
Mm.
market for like you know, more average people like myself? You know what I mean? Like, it seems like this market, you know what I mean? It seems like this market is very
Yeah.
geared towards looks.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Mm,
That's you've dropped kind of a very very big point. I think that you're absolutely correct in identifying that there's a supreme, and I'll just come out and say it, lack of diversity in a lot of these projects, which is beginning to flip,
mm,
which is really nice to see. Um, from an agent's perspective, we obviously need to cater to what the producers are looking for. So when we're looking to represent talent, we don't really want to promise you the world and then deliver you nothing. And as an agent, you don't have control over what projects exist. You have talent and you kind of pitch those and fit those talent for the projects. I'm starting to get into producing, but that's a completely separate thing.
mm.
From an agent's perspective, in terms of the role of the representation, that we can't control what projects come up and what the casting director is looking for. That is a complete other part of the system. So, yes, I absolutely agree that diversity is something that is quite limited in
Mm.
verticals, and I do hope that changes. We do represent some diverse talent, and when I say diverse, I mean not the classic vertical look. Um, we really do hope that more diverse projects will come up, and I think that what I was saying to a talent the other day, and I won't divulge any of his like personal information, but what I said to him is that I'm really hopeful that the industry will kind of move on from the classic look, because I think people, in terms of when I say people, the audience, they do want to see new stories, they do want to see new things going on, and there is profit potential. There is a business reason as to why you might want to create a story that is unique and different, because the viewers, they want to watch that. And I feel like there's been so many verticals that have come out that are not just the same looking cast, but the same story, the same shots, the same everything. And so
Mhm.
it is kind of an industry that is primed to go into something new. And I think this is kind of what you were mentioning before with Candy Jar as well. Um, and what I said to this particular talent is, right now your potential to be a lead is quite limited, just based on how you look. It's going to be quite difficult for you to fit a casting brief that explicitly asks for something different to what you look like. And that's just the reality of the industry. This industry is kind of vain in that respect. But what I told him is, I said that I want to get you in with vertical experience. Jump in for a supporting. If you're open to it and we're able to get you in for a day player, let's do that as well. Because when the story does come up that asks for someone of your ethnicity, of your look, you are going to be one of the only ones that is actually experienced in verticals and how they film. Because as much as
Mm.
casting is about, like I mentioned, the vanity, I've mentioned ethnicity, gender, age, all of those kind of categories. That is what casting is looking for, and they'll attach kind of those categories and be like, you need to fit this particular look. At the point where your look does come up, because I do believe it will. I don't know when, but I do believe that it will. You are going to be one of the only people that is actually prepared and ready. And an example I can give to this effect is, we had a trend come out, I think it was about a year ago now, roughly, where we had what I'll call mature age romances. So instead of having like a classic 35-year-old or 40-year-old man with like an 18-year-old girl, which that's most vertical stories,
Mhm.
what we ended up happening is we had two like 50 or 60-year-olds as the male
Wow.
and the female lead. And there's a few of them that went out, a few of them that did well. The trend didn't take off incredibly far, but in terms of like a category that you would never previously see on a casting list, the category of like a 50 to 60-year-old lead,
Mhm.
that was fresh. That was diverse from an age perspective. So the lead who ended up doing that for the project we did in Australia, um, they'd started doing supporting. And so I kind of see that in my head as an example of, if you are able to just get into the industry, even if the industry isn't asking for you to be a lead today, you kind of have that opportunity to be one of the very few people who then has the experience, and is then kind of like a very easy pitch, because you understand like verticals, you understand the nuances of how the sets work, the speed of filming as well. If you're
Mhm.
able to kind of put yourself in that position, that's the best way that that when the time comes, you'll be able to jump on board. So from an agent's perspective, I don't want to lie to people about the state of the industry. I wish that there was kind of more diversity. Right now, it is still a bit limited, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any potential for it to grow in the future, which is what I'm very hopeful and I do believe will kind of happen. So it's more gearing talent towards the best strategy to get in and be ready for when that happens.
That was a fantastic answer. That was very. I actually have the same thought. That's what I tell people as well. I'm like, for
Awesome.
anyone, for any all these young actors who are like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, this will be the future, and I feel like as it progresses, it's gonna progress exponentially faster than how it did in the horizontal landscape, where like it took forever with diversity. I feel like by the next 2, 3 years, the way these are progressing, I already saw they're doing like Latin American projects. It just seems
Mm.
like this is like obviously going to progress in the same direction. Obviously, it's not right now, but I mean, that's such great advice to, yeah, go in, do the best you can, get all these credits, and then when your time comes, it's going to come.
Yep, absolutely.
And for you, I mean, going back to you being an accountant, what did your accountant friends say when they found out that you were
Oh.
doing these verticals? Like, did you do a watch
Um,
party? Did they know?
I did do a watch party. Well, because I was so
Wow.
excited when this first vertical came out. And it came out, I think, when it released. It was a couple of months after that. They're not very long in post production in general vertical, so it wasn't very long since we finished filming. I hosted a watch party, and got all my friends together. I think we had like, I think 25-ish people, just all in a living room. And I have a projector instead of a TV because I like the convenience of being able to move it into whatever room I want to watch something in. And so I brought this projector out into the living room, and I'd set it up and I was ready to go. I had my cord for the phone so I could project it on. Everyone's ready. We had snacks. It was really, really like wonderful occasion. I didn't tell them that it was like a vertical. I didn't tell them about the plot. I think in hindsight I was embarrassed, but I told myself, "Oh, I want it to be a surprise." Um, but we get there and everyone's ready. Everyone's like keen to go. I plug my phone in, and then the app prohibits me from screen sharing. So I couldn't use the
No.
projector. And I was like, dude, I just wanted to do a watch party. I'd paid for it as well. This was
Wow.
before subscriptions existed. So I had to pay for every single episode. It was like $50
Oh my
um,
gosh.
for my own series. I know. But anyway, I was just excited to show everyone. I didn't know if
Mhm.
I'd ever get another acting project because this was just a full total whirlwind. So I was just kind of trying to milk the situation, I suppose, and enjoy it while it lasted. And so what we end up doing is we set up my phone. I didn't even have like a tablet or anything. We set up my phone, and it's just 25 of us crowded around, just like looking, trying to see, trying to see this vertical. Um, so yeah, it was fun. It was chill. Their reactions were mixed. Some of them were just very encouraging and very happy for me. Some of them were a little bit creeped out by what they saw me do on screen.
I
Um,
mean, yeah.
yeah, it is what it is. But it was fun. It was interesting. But none of my friends were actors or in the industry. Now I've heaps of industry friends that are just wonderful and creative people. But yeah, back then I had like my school friends and my accounting friends. Long story short, they didn't get it. They didn't quite understand. And I think a few of them very politely thought that it was quite cringe. But yeah, overall, I think they get it now.
I think there's a certain like element to enjoying the cringe. I don't
Yeah,
know if you find it that way, but we did
I
I
do.
just did my first one in like December, and like
Congratulations.
it was so funny to watch. Like we like everyone in like it was like me and like a ton of the crew, we came and we watched it, and it was like you get so addicted to the like I got addicted because I found it so funny. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like it's just because everything's so heightened
Yes,
to like the
and
like
the music as
50,000
well that they
times.
use,
Oh yeah,
and
the
the
music.
sound effects. It's like they've just, yeah, exactly. They've tried to put it on like 10,000% of
Mhm.
everything. Yeah.
Do you remember your first like or what the paycheck was for that first one?
Um, so I can probably say it. I don't think that anyone's gonna get mad at me for saying it because this is like 2.5 years ago now.
Mm.
I was on Australian dollars, which, by the way, at the time, before I say the number, I'll just preface that at the time, this number to me was genuinely insane because to get paid at all for acting was like
100%.
crazy.
Yeah.
So the fact that they gave me this number, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Looking back on it, I would not run for this number at all. But it was 350 Australian dollars for each shoot day. And we originally had scheduled 5 shoot days. It then got extended, I think, to 7, because there was no way they were going to shoot it in 5 days.
Wow.
So yeah, that would work out to what, 7 times 20, 24, 50, 2,400,
Mhm.
2.5 grand roughly.
Wow. I mean, I feel like for most people though, especially like those who are actors know that is a lot of money to be made as an actor.
It was.
Yeah.
It's insane. I was shocked. I was like, what? Like I almost went and quit my accounting job just right
Wow.
then and there.
Right there then. You're like, I'm
I
done.
ended
I
up I
made
ended
it.
up going back.
Mhm.
I went back for a couple of months before then quitting for another vertical. But
Wow.
yeah, I got that money and I was like, hey, if I can do this regularly, this is pretty good, man. This is
Yeah.
pretty.
How long did it take you to go to full time after that first one?
It was I went back I think for about 2 months, maybe three. And there's a very long version of the story that I won't bore you with. But effectively, I just moved in the same company to a different job.
Mhm.
And this first vertical timed perfectly with the end of my previous kind of role and the beginning of my new. So it just so happened that the timing, the 1 week of filming, was exactly in that gap, which is crazy to think about looking back on it. But I then went back into this new role, and I wasn't like super happy with the new role. And then another vertical came up, I think 2 months later, with the same
Mhm.
producer that did the first one, and they ended up calling me back, and I was like, okay, cool. I asked my boss, can I get leave? I was like, it was I think 4 weeks, I think 5 weeks before. I asked for it, and my boss was like, no. And so I looked at my contract, and my contract said I only need 4 weeks notice to quit. And I was like, see you later. Good to go.
Wow.
So it was a bit, I didn't have regular work for a while though. So I quit my job, did my second vertical, and then I had like 3 months off. And in those 3 months, I regretted my decisions. And I was like, oh man, I started applying for other companies and things like that, and I was like, I've really just gotten swept up in the fantasy of this all, and I was thinking no more verticals were popping up. That was it. And Australia is like it's still a slow industry, but like 3 months of just silence, nothing. And so I was like, okay, well that was fun. Let's go back and do that's it. And then just got lucky that more popped up. And then I had some people from LA contact me
Wow.
because they'd seen the first one that I'd done, and they were like, "Oh, hey, like we'd like to have you." And then the visa thing kind of was what prohibited that, but that served to me as proof of concept that there were projects happening. And so even though I couldn't go to the US, and I still haven't, which is just a shame, and I hope to kind of make it there soon in the future, but that served to me as proof of concept, and that is probably the only reason that I didn't give up on it after
Mm.
those kind of couple of months while the industry was still creating itself in 2023. And yeah, then just got lucky. China called, Turkey called, few things happened, and yeah, having fun. But yeah, it was a couple of months before things really started to actually line up. I definitely preempted
The
jumping in full
jump.
time. Yeah.
So where's your work primarily coming from now then? Now that you're doing 40, like I imagine you must be doing like one a month at this point. Is it mostly from
Yeah,
like
it's
Turkey or
usually it's
China?
usually like it's usually 2 or 3 in a month, and then two
Wow.
weeks, 3 weeks off. I will mention though that the last time that I actually worked, and this is partially by choice, but the last time that I did a project was early December, and we're now
Mm.
mid-February, so it has been a bit of time off. But yeah, last year was crazy. It was you go fly somewhere and then do kind of 3 projects back to back, fly home, maybe squeeze in a project home, fly somewhere else, do a couple projects, and then rinse and repeat. But it was about 3 projects in a month, roughly, and then a
Three
couple of weeks
projects in a
off.
month.
Yeah, it was busy. It was really busy, super, super fun. I made more friends last year just working like on sets than I think I've made in my entire life in total. And that's not to say that I don't like people and I don't make friends. That's just to say that I met so many like cool people in the last year. And every time you go to a new set, there's usually like 1 or 2 people but there's a whole bunch of new people. So
Mm.
like it was a crazy year for just like the casual socializing you do on set as well. Like my friendship circles have just gone so global and so many amazing people that I've met. It was just crazy, crazy experience.
Yeah, I mean that's what I found too is like the beautiful part about these sets is that there's so many it's like almost like so compact and like it's so intimate that you can actually
Mm.
like meet people and make friends. We're on like big sets on like Netflix. I found like you just shoved in a corner and like you come when you come and you know if you're not called or you know you're kind of just waiting in a trailer by yourself, not really being able to connect with anyone.
Mm. Yeah, that matches my understanding. I think the thing with verticals, or at least the verticals I've done, is there's not a lot of. I have heard differently from some people, but my experience is that there's not a great deal of elitism because
100%.
most of us are still at the very beginning of our career. The majority of us, whether you're a lead or a day player or even background, like we're only, I myself, like I started professionally acting in these things 2023. So I'm
Mm.
still very early. I'm not running around with a 20 year long resume or anything like that. So I think a lot of us in that respect, we all want to kind of continue to grow and continue to succeed. And so we're like super open to understanding, oh, like, where are you at in your career? What's going on with you? Oh, cool. Oh, well, when I was in that position, this is kind of what I kind of did to get around it. Or maybe the reverse of that of, yeah, look, I'm at this point, but I'm really struggling with this. And then someone's like, well, hey, I was struggling with that too. Here's what I did. And then you kind of, you connect on all different levels and all different things. And I found that like a really beautiful thing in this industry, that because as you say it's very intimate and we're all kind of like tight knit in terms of the production of the shooting of these verticals. I like that it gives you that opportunity to actually kind of socialize but on an even level, because no one is like a Hollywood A-lister, which is kind of like a beautiful space. It might not be that way the rest of kind of the industry as it progresses and it tiers and more people get experience, and then there's new people coming in, and then people who are actually like A-list level.
Mm.
But right now, like from my experience of it, it's been a beautiful kind of social circle that lives around these vertical projects.
Wow, I'm still blown away. 2 or 3 a month is just
It's fun.
insane.
Hey,
You
if
know,
I could do 2 or 3 a month just constantly, I would. But especially with the flying, I hate flying, just from a personal taste perspective. But also, like you fly somewhere, your food is going to be different to what you're used to. You can't kind of just go to the store and get something. And you mentioned before that the male lead archetype for these verticals is that he's jacked. So getting good quality sleep when you're in a foreign bed is really difficult. Um, Getting like the right diet, the right kind of macros and nutrition is really hard as well. And then just having like time to go to the gym and work out and kind of maintain that muscle becomes a big challenge.
yeah, I
So I
mean,
definitely
these are
do
long
love
days.
the time off in between.
You don't have to share, and again, we can cut anything you don't want, but you know, someone at your stature, 2 or 3 a month, at least if I'm computing what the girls I've interviewed have made, which is around 10K a month, doing one a month, like the numbers that you must be pulling in a month within 3 years of acting must be incredible.
It is. And this is why I mentioned that the first project, which I won't give you any of my real numbers now,
Totally, totally.
just
Okay.
I'm sure you
Yeah, yeah,
understand that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But comparing kind of what I got in that first project to now, verticals have been financially life changing. The way that I look at these things, most people they quit their corporate job and they think to themselves, oh, okay, and this is how I thought at first. I'll go do my hobby. I'll take like I'd rather get less money but do something I love. That's kind of
Mhm.
typically how that story goes. And by virtue of how the industry has treated me thus far, I'm very, very grateful and very fortunate for it. But I'm able to make significantly more than I would have if I was still an accountant, which is insane, and not something that I at all expected in the beginning. So the the Australian rates are much lower.
Mhm.
The rates in China are also quite low compared to what is happening in LA. So the American rates are higher, I'll say that as kind of just like a general rule because I keep my finger on the pulse of all the different categories of project. But still pretty good, very livable wage, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, it seems like have you noticed? I mean, if you're doing 2 or 3 months, I imagine that you must have, an incredible weight and following through these apps, like fans and things like that. Is there a hierarchy of like male and female talent that is kind of like that A-lister kind of thing, like in the way that like, if you have Brad
Yeah,
Pitt in a movie, it'll bring in numbers or no?
I think the easiest way I can answer that is if you look at the vertical fan accounts on Instagram, and it's not like a full and complete indicator, but if you
Mhm.
look at what fan accounts are presenting as their kind of like the actors or actresses that they'll continually review, or the actors and actresses when they do those kind of like meme posts. I think one that went around a couple months ago was they got a bunch of male leads, and they put them on like a plane in a seating arrangement, and then they had a bunch of numbers, and they said comment which seat you'd like to sit. And I think that there are like probably 300 to 500 male leads that are kind of like working in this industry, doing like more than 3 or 4 projects. So to be on that kind of like top 10 that the fan accounts do, there is a bit of an A-lister vibe to the industry, as is kind of the same for any sport or anything like that, where you have kind of the popular um, actors and actresses, just as you'd have like a popular footballer or anything like that. It definitely does exist for sure.
Mhm. And for you, I mean, I know some people may not understand this, but these male actors, you know, there's so much pressure to keep up, I imagine, with staying to look young and, the diet and the regimen and things like that. Is there ever a worry that, like, someone younger might come and take the spot, if that makes sense? Like, you kind of always have to, like, maintain, a lot of guys lose their hair, so you gotta maintain the hair, you gotta maintain the body. How do you feel about that? Is this like a career that's, has longevity, or is this kind of like a young man's game?
No, I don't think it's a young man's game.
Mm,
I'll just quickly drop that and then I'll explain myself. I'm quite open with my age. It's not something that bothers me. I'm 24. When I first got into verticals, I would have been 21, going on 22.
mhm.
Most vertical leads, males, are sitting around late 20s, early 30s. Some of them, some of the successful ones, are even into their 40s. So from a male perspective, what I've noticed is that there is actually quite a bit of longevity. Um, I I don't know exactly what the future holds, but when I kind of forecast where I'm going with the career, I think that you see a much greater proportion of male leads that are a bit older than female leads, which is the easiest comparison to make of like male lead versus female lead. Most of the female leads are very young, as you said, like some of them are like 18, 19. Um, so I think that from the male perspective, there's quite a bit of time I've got. I don't really feel a time pressure. Um, but that said, I think that there is definitely some weight to the other half of your question, which was about maintaining the appearance. And that is something that I think a lot of the male leads, and myself included in this, put a lot of attention into. And I think that the challenge you have within that is when a guy, and this is kind of just looking at the traditional way of viewing men. I feel like when a guy puts effort into their appearance, given that, say, we don't often wear makeup outside as kind of a way of example of comparison, when a guy puts effort into their appearance, it's sometimes taken generally as odd, as oh, like we kind of have to do so but also look effortless in how we do so. So I feel like that's an interesting balance to strike as well from the active perspective. um, But I really enjoy going to the gym. Like I do it for obviously the career and the vanity of if you're able to look jacked, you have more opportunity to get these leading roles. That's just kind of the reality of vertical casting at the moment. Not a necessity, but definitely the majority of those roles are looking for a jacked kind of character. But I enjoy going to the gym. I like it. I really value my health, my physical health. And I've kind of found a way to bridge those two things together with the
Hmm.
gym, where it's kind of two motivations that both are equally valuable to me. So I do think that there's not all, and I won't call anyone out for this because I feel like it might come across as rude. I don't mean it that way at all. But there are some very good male leads that are not jacked, and they maybe have a physique that isn't the classic kind of muscle man. And they have proven, and I really respect them for this. They've proven that you can have um, more to offer in a vertical series in terms of your acting, your character, than just kind of having muscle, which I think is really really good to see as well. So yes, I do feel like having muscle offers me more opportunity and more potential for roles, and kind of has that. I'll say kind of that sex kind of value. That's that sex
Hmm.
symbol and icon.
Sex appeal, yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah, exactly right. I do think that that's one kind of archetype, and that's probably right now the strongest male lead archetype in the industry. But there are still some other ones. So I don't want anyone listening to this to think that they have to get jacked if they want to be successful. It's just one of very many things that depending on where the industry is at can be a plus in
Hmm.
terms of casting.
And are you seeing the same, like, would you say it's the same for women as well, that there's longevity to this career?
No, comparatively. I would hope that there is, but I will be somewhat brutally honest, and I hope that no one takes this to heart and panics. But if you look at the comparison between the general ages of male leads and female leads, I think women are put under way more pressure. They're held to a much higher standard of beauty, and it's very, very competitive comparatively. I think when a guy puts a bit of attention into his like appearance and physique, he's able to achieve quite a lot. Whereas for a woman, she like comparatively, of course, the actresses are put under a very aggressive microscope in casting. I've received for some of my talent, I've received some very strange commentary from casting directors that I
Hmm.
will not be sharing, and I have not shared with talent regarding kind of like age and things like that. Um, I had one casting director, and this is not anyone kind of big or known, but
Hmm.
it was one casting director who said to me that they don't want anyone over the age of 25. And I said, what does their age matter though? Because it's not like they're showing their date of birth as a character. And the casting director says, "Oh, well, it's just policy. We don't want a female lead over 25." And I use that kind of example as a comparison of you would never say that about a male lead. That's never been said, I don't think, unless it was like a college or like a specifically young
Yeah.
series. But just to use that as an example to show that not only are kind of the actresses' physical appearances really, really kind of put under the microscope, but they're also then given these strange, like they get asked their weight as well. Why?
Huh.
Who cares? No one is putting them on a scale during filming. It's not a thing, right? So it's the age and the weight, they're two completely, unless there's like a horse or an animal involved, I suppose. But they're two relatively irrelevant facts or like stats that these casting directors, multiple casting directors, are using to justify casting decisions, because they've kind of put those arbitrary kind of numbers and targets there. Whereas for the male lead, it's more just, can you send me a photo with your shirt off? And that's it. So comparatively, I think that the actresses are put under a lot more um, uh,
Pressure.
challenging
Yeah.
feedback pressure. That's the word I'm looking for. Perfect. Thank you.
Wow. So then, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
since
really
you're
hope that I don't offend anyone by what I've just said. That
no,
was very candid.
I
So
don't think it's I don't think it's offensive at all. I think it's good to be honest, especially with people's expectation going into this. You
mm.
know, um, it seems like as of now, it's a and hopefully it does get better. It is an industry that is these things are based a lot about looks. Um, have you noticed for any of like your female clients or male clients that it's become to the point of like a detriment to them, like it's been toxic to them to try to keep up with these beauty standards?
um, I don't want to divulge any personal stuff, of course. But I will definitely say that some of my friends, whether they're my talent or not my talent, this is kind of an all inclusive. Um, Both on the male and the female side, this is a very mentally challenging industry to be in. The feedback you receive, and I'll kind of move it from just the basic vanity of how you look, but the comments that you kind of see looking at some of these series when they post an episode on TikTok, for example. And if you scroll through the comments, half the comments will be about they look a certain way or they don't look a certain way. The other half of the comments will be about the acting. And this is something that's really hard for an actor to read, especially someone who's new and just getting into the industry. 90% of the time, whether you do your job or not, 90% of the time, people who don't understand what it is to be an actor feel like they have a responsibility to tell everybody else how bad an actor was. People love to be critical, especially kind of in online comment sections. And so to your question about is this industry difficult to traverse from that kind of emotional and mental side? Those things, whether it comes directly from casting or from members of the public, or one of your friends sees a project you did and then sends it to the group chat with some laughing emojis. Like, it's all those little things. When we perform, there is a personal nature to, I created this. And as actors, we definitely feel like that responsibility of, I created this, so I hope it is good, I hope it is appreciated. And when someone, whether you know them or not, turns around and says a negative kind of critique, that really hurts. Really, really does. And
Hmm.
that's something that for myself, I can speak from my personal experience. In the beginning, it was really, really hard because the character I was given, the story in the way it came out, with the grooming and that kind of part of my character, all the comments were half about the story and half about how terrible my acting was. And I remember reading through those comments. It was a deep dive at 2 a.m. or something, and I'm just scrolling through this. This TikTok went viral for my first project. It had something like, I think it was like 600,000 comments,
Wow.
600,000,
Wow.
right?
Oh
That's
man.
insane. And I went through a good few thousand of them, and not many were positive at all. And I thought to myself in that moment, I remember thinking, oh well, maybe I tried acting, maybe that's it. And I feel like I probably should have taken it to heart even more. But I ended up putting the phone down, going to bed, waking up the next morning, felt a bit off, but like, that was that. Um, but definitely in the beginning, I was not prepared for the amount of negative commentary that doing anything online would receive. And then when you receive it from people you actually know and like friends, they usually don't actually mean anything by it, but that also has a much bigger impact. It's magnified 1,000 times when someone who you actually respect says something negative about what you've done. It's hard. It is really, really hard. It's like I'm chill with now. Doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I sometimes rage bait people in my comment section just because it's fun. Because they, yeah. Anyway, but in the beginning, when it is so personal to you, I definitely think that if you're an actor, and someone kind of comments on your performance, it is such a personal thing, and they shouldn't have that much power over you, but they kind of do, and that is hard. Gets better over time, but it's
Yeah,
hard.
do you have any advice for, I mean, there must be so many actors every day going through something like this where,
Yeah.
they're put in front of the spotlight and then they're immediately like judged by thousands of
Mm.
people. How did you get through that?
I think rejection therapy is helpful. And when I say rejection therapy, what I mean by that is let yourself experience it and go through the comments and then rationalize why they think that way, and rationalize what that person who commented is probably, what do they actually know of the
Mm,
situation. And it might be a bit of an arrogant thought, but i would I would gander that maybe 99.99% of those comments come from people who have absolutely no idea what it is like to be on a movie set, let alone what it is like to be on a vertical set. They don't know about anything that you've been through, and kind of rationalizing that every time you read the comment, that was something that helped me be like, oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, maybe they think that it doesn't actually affect me as much anymore. But over time, doing that repetitively, and I'm not encouraging anyone to go read through those comments. If it is affecting you, put the phone down, move on, come back to it when you're in a bit of a stronger emotional state. But I think that somewhat um, somewhat arrogantly, just accepting that most people who comment on stuff, and I guess this is like expansive to life in general as opposed to just acting, most people that comment don't know what they're talking about. They weren't there. They weren't part of it. They're not experienced. If a vertical actor gives you advice, like someone who's been in verticals, who's seen how it is, that advice is probably not going to be aggressive and attacky. It's probably going to be helpful and constructive. And that kind of shows you the difference of, if someone knows what they're talking about, usually they'll try to help you. And even if their commentary is like, hey, maybe do it a little bit differently next time, it's going to be like to help you, and it's coming from a good place. Whereas someone who says, that was bad acting,
mm.
bro, are you even an actor? Like, have you acted in your life? Do you know what good acting even is? And most of the time when they say it's bad acting, it's a bad story or it's bad editing. And it's not even bad editing or a bad story. It's a story designed for social media. And people who call it bad acting, they're really just projecting the fact that this story doesn't fit what they believe cinema to be. And for that reason, they're like, oh no, it's because the acting is so bad. The acting's unrealistic. And my question to those commenters would be something to the effect of, how would you perform betraying your stepbrother's fiance's ex's miscarriage child that then got car crashed, and he's a billionaire, a homeless billionaire, and a werewolf? How would you act that? Like, it's there's
Yeah.
honestly there's no right answer for something that is that far in fantasy. You could have any reaction, and honestly, it would probably be like somewhat fair, because that situation is just so crazy that these characters are put in. And if you accept there's no right answer, then how could it be wrong? But yeah, all in all, I think that the summary of that little ramble would be just, the longer you kind of commit to it and push through, the easier it gets. There is definitely just a general light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm.
Um, I just, one final point I'll make is, I live streamed Minecraft for a few years. I started this before I did acting, but I still kind of do it occasionally for fun. There is nothing more like harrowing and ego destroying than streaming Minecraft for 8 hours straight, talking the entire time, and getting zero chat messages. There is nothing that will destroy your ego more than that. it was a hell of an experience and really fun, in terms of character development. But at that point, it's like, oh, okay, I've been through it,
Mhm.
and it makes those comments that you receive. Not that I'm suggesting everyone has to stream Minecraft for 8 hours, but things like that. The more you put yourself out there, the more you become desensitized to haters that are just hating because they feel like it.
You know, I've never met a successful hater. Like anyone who's
Valid,
commenting
true.
online, I always look at their pages and I'm like, man, like you're not doing much. You know, like
It's always the motorcycle profile pics and private accounts. That's what I see. It's like it's a good
yeah.
50% of the repeat hate comments. I have some people on my Instagram that like will go into several posts and put down a hate comment. And half the time it's private account motorcycle profile picture. No hate towards motorcycles,
Yeah.
but it's a trend I've noticed.
I was noticing like I mean I'm getting a couple haters or whatever, and it's I always look at their profile. It's always like they don't have much going on. Like
Yeah,
they're really like if they're hating on that on the acting or me talking about verticals, it's like they haven't done much as an actor. You know, it's a very
it's really
interesting.
sad to me when an actor hates on an actor.
I was just
That's
gonna say
sad to me.
that it's really
Yeah.
interesting. I find a lot of actors hate on verticals. Like a big portion of the
It's because
haters.
they hate the fact that people they deem less successful than themselves are making money and
That,
amassing a following and getting like critical acclaim from fans. Like they hate to see people successful that they believe are lower than them because it messes with their worldview.
mhm.
They kind of have that accepted circumstance of, and I'm guessing here, right? I can't read minds, but they have this worldview of I am a good actor because I don't do verticals, and then they see people doing verticals and being good, and they're like, no, that's not possible. How dare they?
Especially with the amount of money, I mean, I was
Yeah.
hearing people talk about anywhere from like $20,000 a month, like even more than that at like the top level. And I'm like, wouldn't you want to be a part of this? Like, wouldn't you want to be a part of like all these actors and all these opportunities and all these like connections you could be making rather than, saying, oh, it's trash or oh, it's this? Because I mean, I'm sure you being in this 3 years, you must notice
Mm.
the stories and the cinematography and everything else getting better, correct?
Better and worse. There's this is an interesting new place to take this conversation, but there are some producers that are fantastic, and I've seen their development throughout kind of the last 3 years, and it's really great to see what they're coming up with. Equally, there are some producers that are kind of chasing the stats that I spoke about earlier, which is they're chasing the views, they're doing the shocking content, and based on whether or not they're making money, I don't know. I'm not privy to that information, but from my perspective, when you put down the phrase "getting better," from like my perceived quality perspective, it's getting worse. So it
Oh,
is. There are
really?
some that are going up, some that are going down, but it really just you kind of have to qualify when you like what do you mean when you say better?
I feel like, and maybe it's just like my For You page or whatever,
Mm.
but I'm seeing um, a bigger emphasis on lighting, cinematography, um, the acting. I feel like has become, I don't know another word, but better. I feel like people are like, if that makes sense.
You'll
Does
find that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I mean I went back and I watched a few, and it just seems like people are treating this like a profession now, where maybe before they're like, oh, I'm just gonna do a vertical here and there, and it's kind of like money, but now it's like this is an actual big element of the entertainment industry, and with like Netflix getting involved and Disney getting involved, like these are here to stay. And so
Mm.
I mean, like we were talking about Candy Jar, like it just seems like there's an overall push to like try to be better. But I guess like you were talking about
When
with,
you say better, I'd like to throw down a different word. I'd like to say more committed.
yes,
And I
that
think
was the word I was looking for. Yes.
yeah, from the actor's perspective, especially, I think it's if an actor doesn't commit to their character, especially when their character is like 10,000% of what it should be
Mhm.
in real life. When an actor doesn't commit, it falls flat, and the whole point of the scene, the whole beat, the value of the scene, whether it's shocking or not, it's really hard for one actor, for example, to be scared, and for the audience to accept that character is scared
Mhm.
if the other character is not actually scary and menacing, if that makes sense. So if you don't
100%.
have kind of full commitment from the person doing the scaring and the person being scared, that's kind of where we had verticals in the beginning, because we thought as actors, we thought, oh, to be menacing is to be kind of unpredictable and withdrawn and dark. But now we're kind of realizing, oh, okay, if we want to be that kind of, and I almost kind of qualified as like, it's like a Disney cartoon character sometimes. That's what
Mm.
these verticals are kind of after in the, shall we say, overacting. And when both parties kind of commit to that overacting, that like intense, super like 1,000%, that's when that commitment, I think, creates a better quality vertical. So from
100%.
the actor's perspective, I think actors are now committing to letting themselves like actually like pop off
Yeah,
in the scene.
I was watching like Jameson, and like I feel like a really big reason for her success, especially lately, like her following has grown crazy, is she is always so committed to everything she does. Like when I was on set with her, like she never grabbed a tear stick. She was like in it, tears, like just if saw her boyfriend cheating on her, like she was giving it 100.
Oh,
And I think
yeah,
that
wow.
translates because I was like, whoa, like she's giving it her all. Like she's committed, like you said.
Mm.
And I feel like the more and more, actors we get like on that commitment level, like sky's the limit for these. What are your thoughts on that? On Netflix now saying they're going to get into it, and in Disney as well. I saw
Did
they're doing the zombie
did
film.
Netflix really say that they were getting into it though? It looked to me, and this is something that Netflix has been popping around with the last 2 years. It just looked to me
Okay.
like they're going to cut classics into a vertical frame.
Mm,
I don't know if it's like them just dipping the toes in the water, but like it was always going to happen. I feel like the more people that use their phone in a vertical format, the more people use social media in a vertical format. Netflix kind of has to, as a business, keep its customers on the app. And if the customers prefer, or even if some customers prefer the option to have like a vertical frame for the projects that those customers might watch, then cutting it is fair. Definitely Disney is jumping on because they're actually like investing in verticals.
yeah.
And when we talk verticals, we're talking about like vertical dramas. We're talking about those 60-second episodic
Yeah.
um, projects. I don't think from memory when I read the Netflix article, unless I'm mistaken. If you want to correct me on that.
I mean, I got to look more into it too. I mean, I thought I saw an
Okay.
article that was one of the co-CEOs is gonna like head up a vertical department, and like they're gonna try to go into it. I know for
I
sure
hope
Disney
so.
is.
I really hope so. That'd be
Yeah.
fantastic. Disney is Fox is
Yeah, I've seen a few
um
auditions for Fox verticals.
yeah. So that's really awesome. That's cool. And yeah, I think Disney, if I recall correctly, Disney has invested in Drama Box in their like think tank program.
Yeah, I think they have like some sort
That's
of
what they're doing.
partnership from what I've understood.
Yeah.
I know
So they're
that they're
keeping them at
doing.
arm's length, but they're doing
Yeah,
it, which is cool.
I know that they have. I think I just saw that they're doing. They have a movie called Zombies that has always done really well with like kids and things like that. And I saw that. I think that's going to be one of their first vertical projects. Is like
Hell
adapting
yeah,
it and
nice,
doing it into a
cool.
vertical. Um, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think these old kind of legacy media companies are going to be able to compete with the Real Short, Drama Box? Uh,
Well, they don't have to compete. Their kind of distinct advantage is that they have like a ton of money, and they have a business model already in another area of entertainment, which I would call traditional entertainment, like the
mm,
cinema that turned into streaming. They already have that, and that's successful. So they don't need this to be successful straight away. They're kind of just checking in, being like, oh, okay, we see you guys are doing something cool. Let's have a look at that and see if we can kind of jump in on it or do it better and be competitive. If they end up being competitive, that's obviously the goal. But I think their distinct advantage is that they are a massive, massive company that this is kind of just like a side quest for them for starters. This is just like a little check in. I think that's awesome overall for the industry, because I think that when you start making decisions without thinking just about the specific financial data, I'm sure it's still a consideration. But
hmm,
for a new vertical app, for example, they need to make money. And so they're not really willing to go out and do the new things, the creative things, the cool things that no one else is doing, because they kind of want to just rinse and repeat what is safe, because it's already a big kind of investment. They need to be successful. Whereas I feel like when Disney's getting into it and Fox is getting into it and hopefully Netflix, um, they just need to make something like they can afford to take the risk, is kind of where I'm coming from, which I think from an industry perspective, risk and creative risk is what propels the industry forward and creates growth. And
hmm,
if they can prove it, if the companies that have the ability to take the risk, if they can prove that risk is worth it, then hopefully what we'll see is the companies like Real Short and those kind of companies that exist just as vertical platforms, we'll see them using Fox or Disney's risk as reason for or data points to say, oh, we should try this new kind of story. And so I actually feel like Fox and Disney, they will become industry leaders because of their ability to take those risks. Whether they take them or not, I don't know. But
mm.
I'm more hopeful that they're in more of a position to do so, which I think could be great for the industry overall.
And how do you see these like interacting with the traditional media? Do you think this is going to take away from, movies and kind of be the end of cinema? Because in my opinion, I mean, just based on my interactions, like, I used to coach tennis, and like none of those kids went and saw movies. Like none of them. Like they're all like
Mm,
glued to their phones, TikTok, Instagram. They told me like they fast forward through like movies at home. Like if there's like a boring
mm.
part, they just skip it. So do you think these are going to be kind of like the replacement for that or supplement it?
Yeah, it's a big question that a lot of people have asked, and it's I think that like I'm an actor, I'm a talent agent. Soon I'll be a producer, so I'm not the most qualified to answer that question. So my answer is kind of just to preface it that this is just my forecast, my estimation based on my experience in the industry. Um, I like to use the example of bookstores. When the
Mm,
internet came out and started kind of movies came out and then streaming came out, everyone has like throughout my I'm 24, 2001 was when I entered this world.
mm,
And throughout my entire life, people have said that bookstores are dying, basically. There are less bookstores than when I was a kid, but there are still a few. People
mm,
still appreciate like a hardback novel. And if not a bookstore, we then have Kindles or ebooks. We then have audiobooks, which are a slightly different medium, slightly different format, but they still come from that same root of a book. So when it comes to verticals and their place in the content mix, I don't believe that verticals are going to prevent cinema from continuing to grow and increase. I think there is something really special about sitting in a theater, whether it's a live performance or a screen. There's something really special about sitting in a theater. You've got the sound system all around you. You've got kind of other people and an audience reacting to things and like big moments. And there is kind of that feeling of physical community as well that cinema has. That's something that verticals kind of struggle with, because the idea of a vertical is that you can watch it on your phone, and it's meant to kind of like start as like just a 1 minute or 2 minute commitment, and then the apps kind of like try and psychologically
Yeah, they
manipulate you
keep
into
going.
staying there, right? But the idea is that it's just a 1 or 2 minute commitment, so there's not that big physical community. And especially given how quick these things pop up and then disappear, like the shelf life of most verticals is like a month. It used to
Mhm.
be 2 months, now it's about a month. And you're lucky there are a few verticals, some that like transcend that and go further, but it's about a month. It's all released in one go. There's not a big kind of community of fandoms, for example. There's more fandoms for actual like actors, like talent fandoms, as opposed to fandoms about a series. Whereas if you have a look at, say, I don't know, Twilight, or Star Wars, or any of those big franchises, there are massive fandoms. There are people
Mhm.
writing fan fictions about those stories, and those stories have huge communities. So I feel like verticals just have a very different place in the content mix. There will be some people that choose to watch a vertical rather than go to the cinema, but I don't think that verticals are the reason that people don't go to the cinema. I think verticals have come at a time
Hmm.
where cinema was already kind of falling off. So whether cinema sticks around or disappears, I don't know, but I don't think that verticals are going to play a very big part in that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There's always a Barnes and Noble, it seems, in America, every town. So I definitely see them staying around. I
Well,
think it's just so interesting. Please,
sorry.
no, please, you go.
Okay. Well, I think that bringing in another element to this topic with AI, I think that AI is a potentially cool resource. People kind of sit on various levels, but wherever you sit, I think that the introduction of AI is going to make online content feel less real. When I watch
Mm,
some videos, even if it's actually a real video, sometimes I suspect that it might be AI. I don't even know whether it is or isn't. But AI is kind of already at the point where it can create a video that looks pretty real, with all of kind of the filter issues of like me shooting a bad quality video on my phone on social media. And I think that when people kind of see AI on the same level as they see movies and cinema and like a normal bit of content that I'd say post on social media, I feel like as human beings, and I'm going to get a little bit philosophical here, but as human beings, I feel like we crave human connection. And I think that's why storytelling in cinema is so powerful, because you have that human kind of connection with the people acting in that story. And if we begin to suspect, or we kind of don't feel like cinema is as real as it felt previously, I actually think live performance is going to have a massive comeback. And I think this is
hmm.
kind of a positive, a very optimistic outlook. But I think a lot of actors love to perform in theater. They love live performance, but traditionally there's not a lot of money in it, because by the time like you pay for the location costs and all the rehearsals it takes and all of that, it's really hard to make a career out of acting in general. It is
Yeah.
10 times harder to make a career out of theater. But I think that when people crave that human connection, theater from a society perspective will become greater valued. And then the opportunity for an actor to perform in a theater show, I think, will become a lot more of a financially viable decision, which I hope. I hope. But verticals may spur that on. They may not. That's kind of just another thing I wanted to say about the
Oh
content
yeah.
mix of the future.
The the AI in verticals, I mean, it seems like it's pretty prevalent in the writing, from what I've heard.
It's going
Is
to be
that
prevalent
correct?
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, maybe this is a hot take, but I think it's already been involved in a lot of studios.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
almost every
surprised
project would have AI to some
to some
respect,
degree.
even if it's just in the accounting.
Yeah.
Like it's
And
AI is just kind of decision making based on kind of a memory bank of stuff. And so they'll use it in the accounting, they'll use it in the script, they'll use it in the editing to speed up the process. It all comes down to what's the most efficient way to get this done of a quality that we're happy with.
I've heard, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was listening to a vertical podcast, and they were saying that now there's completely like AI verticals that
Yep.
have been like shown to do well in China and in India, but
Yep.
have not been as successful in the US. What are your thoughts on that? Like, it seems like it's just completely annexed the actor or like chopped the actor out of the whole process.
Chop the whole production.
Yeah, the whole production,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
it's just the actor is kind of the last line that we're able to see.
yeah.
But I think AI has been creepy, and it's not a. I don't believe that it is this kind of cancerous thing that is working its way
Mm,
into our daily lives, but it has in every level infiltrated. I don't mean to use that kind of aggressive language, but it has infiltrated every aspect of production. And there are Instagram series that I can see that are, you can tell that they're AI, like they're done with a very kind of like basic level AI, and they're kind of cartoony, that kind of thing. I think that AI is going to completely, and it's already started doing it, completely or close to completely remove the big kind of chunk of the commercial market.
mm.
And this is just outside verticals in general, but we see AI ads already. They're produced with like
Everywhere, yeah.
$500. You don't have to pay residuals. You don't have to pay like for the crew, for the location, the setup. A commercial would run you up like 50K if you want to do a big commercial, right?
If not more
Now,
with like
yeah,
talent.
yeah, exactly, right? And if you wanted to renew the commercial, if it did perform successfully, you then have to pay talent, which is fair, as you should,
Yeah.
but you would then have to pay talent kind of an additional usage fee if you wanted to keep running the commercial. You didn't even own it. But with AI, and we'll see how the law kind of like balances this out, and the union is quite against it, I'm pretty sure, from the posts I've been seeing from SAG. But from like a business perspective, you can just create this AI commercial and then just run it, and all you have to pay for is just the spot of the ad,
Mm.
wherever it's the kind of being posted. So I think that's where AI is going to really kind of cut out. A lot of actors use commercials as kind of an in between other projects, and I think this is where verticals are going to swoop back in.
Mm.
If you can't make that additional income from a commercial or from the usage you get from commercials, verticals are kind of running a pretty similar financial number. So I think that if you can't get a commercial and you need money and you'd rather be acting for it, verticals are kind of the natural next thing to look at as well.
But do you think there'll ever come a point where I've heard some of these AI verticals have done pretty well numbers wise?
Mm,
Do you think there'll
yeah,
come a point where it's just all AI,
I don't think it'd be all AI,
but
and
a
this
portion?
proportion of. I think that the challenge you'll have is there will always be, and I think this, I don't know this, but I think there will always be a uh, a viewer who wants to see real people.
Hmm.
I think that's something that a lot of people have made quite loud on social media in their kind of anti AI campaigns and the like. I think also you do obtain value from a viewer's fan base, and this kind of brings us into the social media side of things. If an actor has a following, it is one of the kind of potential success metrics of a series. And this is why
Hmm.
actors with big followings or good credits or good previous kind of vertical stats, they get paid a lot more
Hmm.
because they're able to kind of use that of like, hey, sure, I'm expensive, but I'm expensive because I'm good. And you want to make money from this project. Verticals don't offer residuals. So you want to make money off this project. If I'm in this project, you will make more money. That's kind of
So
the way that conversation goes.
is there an element of like a following that does affect your salary? And oh, there is in verticals.
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
not it's not like if you have X amount, you get this amount. It's not a
Hmm.
clear number. And at the end of the day, every project is unique in their budget and what they're willing to spend. But it is similar to like a physique, right? Everyone's physique is slightly different. Everyone's look is slightly different. Everyone's following is slightly different. So it's just one of those, shall I say, vanity metrics that suggests whether or not it's worth paying that amount of money to cast you. If you get a
In
no name, which is the equivalent of an AI, someone who has no credits or like a couple of credits, but like nothing impressive, just basic, they existed, the vertical got released, they have experience.
Mhm.
That it would kind of be where the AI would be toe to toe on. Whereas if you
Mhm.
take someone who's kind of at the top or even kind of the middle of the game, who has a bunch of credits, who has a bit of a following, I feel like there's a stronger confidence that the series will go well in that respect.
Is there a number of followers that you see as okay, now it's beneficial?
Not really.
No.
I'll say my number. I'm on 15K at the moment. Um, I really pushed to get to 10. And then once I hit 10, I kind of just like chilled out a bit.
Mhm.
And I haven't put as much energy into it as I did. But that was in November. November, I was like, I started getting told when I went to casting directors, I started getting asked for my social media following. And it wasn't something that I'd like focused too much on. I knew that it was just a good thing to have. I knew it was a plus. I think that's just a generally accepted thing in this industry. But I didn't really feel like it mattered. And then I had a few casting directors ask me for like my social media profile and asking like for a screenshot of my follow account. And I was like, oh, okay. I want to keep working. I want to
Wow.
get paid more. So I'm gonna work on that. So yeah, I felt like 10K for me, and this is just a number that I came up with for myself as a goal. I felt like that solidified myself as a presence online, as someone that like, oh, okay, they have 10K followers. It has the K in it, which
Mhm.
makes it distinctly visually different to 9,999, where you just get four numbers.
Yeah.
Whether that's the real number or not, I mean, anyone can be the judge. Getting to 4 digits is better than 3 digits, and getting to 3 digits is better than two. Um, so you can just keep going up. And as soon as I got to 10K, I was like, all right, let's go for 100. And then I just didn't because I was like, oh, that's, yeah, maybe in the future. I'll get back on it. But yeah, 10K, I think for me was the number where I was like, that looks established,
Mm.
just visually speaking.
And have you noticed any change in the amount of projects you get cast in with the 10K involved or no?
I mean, I did that in November. This
Okay,
is
so
gonna be
it's
really
just started.
ironic. This is gonna be a really ironic response, but I did that in November. I'd already been cast in my December project, and I haven't worked since.
Okay.
So I haven't gotten any work since I got there. So I mean, I guess that can show you that it's definitely not a pass fail to have
Mhm.
10K. But I think that it's I've been turning down projects, so it's not as like bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
I say that somewhat comedically, but um, I do think that it is helpful. I think it is more helpful for people who don't have vertical credits. This is something that I think
Mm.
is really important, because if you have a vertical credit, most platforms then use the credit as the justification for why you are either good or bad. That's kind of
Mhm.
like the, oh, you have vertical credit. How did this project go? It got less than 1 million views. Okay, we don't really care too much. Or how did it go? It got 100 million views. Wow, fantastic. You must be amazing. Let's hire you and pay you a bunch of money. Obviously, like that's not
Wow.
exactly how the
Yeah,
conversation
yeah,
goes,
yeah.
but for example, whereas I feel like if you've never done a vertical before, and you tell them that you've never done a vertical before, they might use your following as a bit of an understanding of, are you popular? Because they like to
Mm.
have confidence in the decision beyond just, yeah, you have a good look, we like your tape. They like to have a bit of confidence of, oh, you have other people that like you. It's that like entourage concept with the following. So I think, yeah, it's more important, I think, for people who are looking to get into the industry. And if you're already in the industry, then you can kind of get around it a little bit.
Interesting. So when people, because I mean some of these get like 150 million views, right? I mean I think Jameson
Those are good
and
numbers. Those are
yeah,
good numbers. Yeah.
and Natalie were both in projects that hit over 150 million. Are you seeing, for is it just primarily the leads that benefit off these, or is it like, oh, if you were like a supporting day player in these, you know, you have that credit, now you would also get a benefit from that?
I mean it's a proportionate benefit. If
Mhm.
your face is on the poster, big benefit. Whether you're a leader or supporting, if you get on the poster, great, awesome. If you are not on the poster and you use that credit as, oh, I was in this series, got 150 million views, and then you send the series to the casting person looks at the poster, they're probably going to be comparing you to whoever was lead in that series,
Mm.
which it might still be a good thing. And I still probably on balance would recommend you use that credit as like a, hey, I was kind of like a major character here. Say you were the villain or someone that wasn't the lead. I would still use that credit, but just be aware that if you're going for a lead role, it's really important that you have a lead credit because that gives the casting person confidence that, oh, this is a lead actor. There's a bit of kind of like a status difference between you're someone I can trust to lead as opposed to, this is a casting thing, this is not a me thing,
Mm.
but there's a bit of a different status as, oh, you've been leading these projects versus you've been supporting in these projects. So if the role you're
Interesting.
going for is supporting, great, use supporting credits, totally fine. um, if you're going for a lead role, it's it's a hard balance to say whether or not to use the credit because it the way that the credit we have here is a good one, um, but you don't want to pitch yourself as a supporting if you're going for a lead. That's kind
Interesting.
of where I'm coming from. So you can loosely just put it in there, I think, but I wouldn't glorify it too much if
Have
that's what you're going for.
have you seen, and this is just my curiosity, but
Hmm.
have you seen actors who are supporting who have made a living for themselves as a supporting actor? Like, let's say they're not like obviously up to with these, like, 6'2" jacked kind of, male or female standards that they
Hmm.
have in these verticals. Have you seen like someone who may be more of a character actor being able to make a living as maybe, the villain or the
Hmm.
assistant, that seems to be prevalent in these?
It's rare, but it's possible. It takes a lot, and the biggest challenge is not just it's not just the lower day rate because usually supporting gets a lower day rate.
Mhm.
Sometimes not, occasionally not, but usually supporting is a lower day rate for the villain or something similar. The big challenge is actually number of shoot days because if you and especially if you're flying out, if you fly out for a project and the shoot is happening in say a 10-day window, day 1 you fly out, day 10 you fly back, so you've got 8 days. You have a fitting, you're only needed for 4 shoot days, maybe even 3. So you're then having to block out 10 days for 2 or 3 shoot days. The
Mhm.
alternative is your lead 10-day block, fly out, fitting, 7 shoot days, fly home. So you're getting paid more per day and you're getting that, like, you're constantly working when you're there. So the big challenge for a supporting, and even if you take out the fly out, the big challenge of the supporting is you need to book more gigs, which inherently is just more paperwork, more auditions, more challenges. So it is very hard comparatively. It's not impossible. I know at least one person that's doing very well for themselves in that respect. But for everyone, I could name probably 15 leads that are quite comfortably kind of booking roles and working as much as they reasonably want to. Um, so yeah, it's a lot harder. It's mainly because you have less shoot days.
Mm. Hopping back to the AI stuff, how do you as a talent agent protect your clients in this medium that is non-union? It's kind of like the Wild West in a way,
Mm.
from them losing their image to these companies.
We have an AI clause. Um, it's it's a challenge because not only like you have the stuff written in the contract, and so if you ever needed to sue or you needed to kind of take legal action, you can. The problem is that you often don't know. And this is something that I will be like kind of upfront and honest. There is absolutely nothing stopping a platform from just pumping your footage into AI, producing something that has your footage and 20 other people's footage. The platform might not even own the footage that they're using, but they can just pump that into AI. It'll churn out kind of like a rough average because that's what AI does, right? It's an
Mhm.
average of all the inputs. Churn out a rough average that kind of looks like you, kind of looks like him, kind of looks like them, kind of looks like them, to the extent that like you wouldn't even know. And they've probably done it. Um, at that point, like there's really realistically, there's nothing you can do because if you go into like a massive legal battle with them, it's going to be harmful for your reputation for starters. This is going to be such a morbid commentary, so I apologize for this in advance. But uh, not only is that legal battle going to like run you dry financially, but you don't have any evidence that they've done it. The way technology exists, as I understand it right now, is it's really hard to prove if there are like 100, say 100, right? Say they've pumped in every bit of vertical footage they've ever kind of like created. How would you know? How would you prove it? Unless you have like someone on the inside who's like collecting that data or you hack into their mainframe like the middle of a spy movie, like you can't. And equally, what's to stop some random person from taking the footage that they've gotten off Netflix and doing the same
Mhm.
thing? This is something that is really scary about AI, and it's I think this is why SAG is so anti its use and trying to force so many kind of restrictions around it. It's not because they're anti-progress. It's because there is genuinely no method of tracking and making sure that you're not having your performance kind of pumped in there because the reality is it probably already has. So
Yeah.
from a protection standpoint, like we have a clause that we always add to our contracts about the use of AI, also about the fact that all like footage is project specific. So the platform can't just go and make a secondary project with
Mhm.
additional footage or make you shoot 5 different characters for 5 different series under one contract, unless that's obviously previously discussed. Um, so that there are those clauses exist, but in terms of, and I say this to talent as well, those clauses exist, but it's something you have to be aware of, and this is why the reference checks I think are so important. Of okay, who is this platform? Who has worked with them before? How was their experience? And obviously, like the priority for those is safety, especially if it's kind of like a fly out kind of project. But it is also looking at okay, did they take your footage? And this has happened. There have been some blatant examples of this where a platform will take a vertical they've shot, right? And then they will literally produce the exact same vertical with only the footage from the first one in an AI remake. That is a big red flag. That is a huge big red
Wow.
flag. And that would probably be evidence you could use to actually like engage in like a legal battle if you wanted to. But the best case is you avoid that altogether. At which point, if a platform that's done that comes to us and says, "Oh, we want this talent, do the tape, that kind of thing. Let's talk about it." I just wouldn't trust them, and I'd say to the talent, "Hey, if you're okay with like an AI remake being made, we'll put the clause in, but just be aware that like that could happen and that this is a risk." And at that point, most talent would say, "No, I'm good," and we would say, "Yeah, that's probably the best call." So I think the clause reference checks, but also just like understanding that it is very, very difficult to prove any of those kind of things.
Will
So
these
just
big
yeah,
be careful.
be
Will
careful,
these
basically. Yeah,
big companies like Drama Box and Real Short adjust their contracts for you or no?
yeah,
Oh, they will. They'll accept your
bro,
AI
bro.
clause.
Whoever like started the sorry, whoever started the idea that like no, these are standard contracts and we're not going to adjust them is lying. Like,
Wow.
if you are an actor who has never negotiated a contract, you are probably doing yourself a disservice. Now, there are some contracts that you should take at face value. There are some contracts where, depending on where you are in your career, depending on kind of the star power you have, the experience you have, there will be times where you need to take a contract, and if you try to negotiate the terms, you will lose the gig. That is a risk. Okay, and that is, I don't want to tell people they have to negotiate contracts, but if you take a contract at face value, especially for a non-union gig, and your rationale is, well, they don't negotiate with anyone. If you were like an A-lister or you had like several million followers, they would adjust their contract for you.
Mm.
If you were a B-lister and you had 1 million followers, they would probably adjust their contract for you. If you were a C-lister and you had 100K followers, maybe. Right now, we're getting to the territory where we don't really know. So the negotiation is a process of, hey, I have this value to provide you. You have this role or this value to provide me. Where can we meet so we can mutually align on this? There will be some times where you can't negotiate and you just have to take it or not take it. You don't have to take every gig that falls across kind of asking for you, especially if there's like issues around it or terms you're not happy with. But a contract is a negotiable thing. Like I don't want to, again, I don't want to force someone to negotiate contracts because everyone's at a different position in their career. But unless it's a union gig, and even then, like you still can negotiate, but a union gig gives you a bit of like confidence in protections. Usually union contracts have been pre-negotiated to a point where most of the conditions and stuff are pretty good. That's why the union kind of exists. So those minimum standards on set are met. And even then, you could still negotiate if you really wanted to. But no, the standard contract thing is just an untrue lie. It's spread by people who just don't want to negotiate. And fair enough. Like they're incentivized not to because what they offer you is obviously going to be the lowest that they're willing to give. Because if I was giving you a contract, I want the best deal for me. That's my job. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Sorry, that was a bit
Well,
of a
that's
rant. That's
no,
a
no,
very
that
passionate thing I have. I apologize
no,
for being
that's
so expressive
perfect.
there.
I mean, I hear so many times people will just be like, "This was standard. They said it was standard." And so it's like it's so refreshing and it's so great to hear because I'm sure so many actors are going to benefit from hearing that.
I
Like
hope. I
having
really hope.
having an AI clause is standard. Like
It should be.
you should fight for that in your contract for all these platforms, whether it's a vertical or if it's a horizontal, you should be able to have that in your contract.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Man, and so all these companies, I mean, I'm shocked because I've heard people, who've worked, I won't say which one, but one of the major ones, and they've said that they won't adjust their contracts. But hearing that you've been able to do that is
That's such a
phenomenal.
lie. That is such a lie. Yeah, like I won't name any specifics. I've been told that. I've been told so many things. Whether it's it's a standing contract, we won't adjust it, or the script isn't ready, so you can't see it until you've signed the contract. An example of that one is, okay, I'll sign an NDA, but I'll sign an NDA so you can give me the script, and then I'll have a read of the script, and then I'll sign the contract. And there are some of my talent who that is a condition. Not all of them. Like for me personally, like I don't have to read a script. I like to know a summary of stunts, intimacy, and any other kind of like wild requirements. That's usually what I ask. But from like a contract negotiating perspective, it is not uncommon to sign an NDA and then get the script and then review it, and then if you're able to review it like quickly. The biggest challenge with all these negotiations, and this is where I'll kind of flip to the other side of why you wouldn't negotiate, is that a lot of verticals happen very quickly, and a lot
Mm,
of productions, and this is to speak on behalf of productions from like a positive perspective, that a lot of them are not trying to screw you over. And I don't mean to kind of put that negativity out there. There are like quite a few producers that are lovely, that are really looking out for you, and they're obviously under pressure from their boss and manager who is asking for certain things, and their job is to make it happen. But a lot of them do kind of look out for actors, and I don't want this to be like a a hugely negative commentary. Where was I going with this? I had a really important thing I wanted to say. Yeah. the biggest challenge with negotiating is that as soon as you start saying no to something, they can take that contract and they can give it to the next person.
Yeah.
And that is the risk that you're running with the negotiation. If you start being what they might call you as saying difficult, if you're difficult to deal with, that might cause them to just give it away, give it to someone else, because that person will be easier to deal with. And if a vertical is shooting in 2 days' time and they're looking for a lead, and you start asking all these questions and doing all these contract changes, if they have any other option, they will go to that option because they don't
Wow.
have the time or the bandwidth to negotiate with you. So it is very much a case by case basis. At the end of the day, if there's a contract you are unhappy with, don't accept it. That's as simple as it gets. But people are in different situations in life. You might really need the money. You might really, really want the credit. You don't have to be 100% happy with everything. But if there's something that makes you genuinely feel unsafe, that's usually a big, big no-no. Like if they won't tell you what the intimacy is, if they're really shady with that, that's a big red flag for me.
I actually just turned down a vertical because I was reading the contract and it was like we have the right to use and create like AI versions of you for other series that pertain to this series. And it was very loose language.
Mm.
And when I brought it up, they're like, no, it's not for that. It's for translation. And I can understand, as the producers aren't actually the ones that are making the decisions. I like don't always put
Yeah.
it on them. But then why is it in the contract that they can do it? And
If they
so
don't need it, they can take it out. It
yeah,
honestly, it takes 3 seconds to erase a line.
yeah.
It's not hard.
And I feel like it's and I've produced my own. I've done a feature and a short, and it's yeah, like I said, it's not terribly hard to redo these contracts and just erase something or add something. Um, but yeah, it's very fascinating to me because I'm assuming every other actor who's in that project didn't read that section
Or
because
they read
now
it and they were like, well,
it is what it is.
let's
Yeah,
hope they don't act on it, you know?
yeah. Man, 'cause there are some benefits because I mean, even in Instagram, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you post a reel, you can do the translations, and the translations are like phenomenal. You
Bro,
know?
listening to myself speak Spanish on one of my Instagram reels was like insane. It was so cool. Yeah, I've seen that feature.
Like those are beneficial, but you always worry about the actor, and like you said though, I mean, it's incredibly tough to be able to prove that they used your
You can't
likeness,
enforce it. You really can't.
man. And then another question I have is, a lot of these actors who are submitting for these are obviously might not be represented. They might be like this is like some
I'd
of
say
their
probably
first credit.
80%. Yeah.
Even some of the leads. In your opinion, if I could like ask, and again, this is just like a
Of course. Yeah.
guesstimate. What would you say? Okay, if you book a lead in one of these from one of the bigger platforms, what rate would you be for supporting? What rate should you negotiate for a day player? What should you be negotiating for?
This is a very broad question. Very
Very
broad.
broad. Very
And
broad.
similar to what I mentioned before, everyone's in a different position. Every project is unique in its
Mm,
budget. I have turned down more projects than I've done
mm,
for multiple different reasons. Sometimes the pay wasn't there. Sometimes they were shady about certain things that just gave me a bit of the ick. And I was like, okay, I don't think that this is going to work. But thanks for your time, that kind of thing. In terms of budgets, they vary country to country a lot, a lot. Like the LA budgets are usually much bigger than the Australian budgets. Canadian kind of sits roughly on par with LA, sometimes a little bit lower, tends to be like slightly lower. And China sits kind of anywhere between the Australian budgets and the Canadian ones. There's also like projects happening all across Europe. They are up
everywhere.
and down. That I haven't been able to kind of slot them in anywhere in that. But yeah, so it's geographically different. Where is most of your audience located?
America. So
Would it
yeah,
be
the
LA?
States.
Yeah.
LA, yeah.
Um, it's kind of hard for me to speak on LA, and I'm kind of afraid to, because I know that there's so many more people. Like, I haven't done a gig in LA, so I feel like it would be improper for me to kind of throw down an estimate there. But I have seen castings, and I think if you take the base rate of casting and you add 200 USD or 300 USD, that's usually what, if someone with experience would jump in, would be getting as a day rate. So I see some
Mm,
castings for LA or even New York that have a base of 900 1K USD for the lead. Those kind of higher budgets, they're only looking for experienced actors. The ones that are going for that amount, they're not looking for someone who's never done a vertical, unless you have like an insane online presence elsewhere. They'll want someone who's experienced with good credits. And
mm,
so yeah, if they're sitting anywhere between like 1200, 1400 USD per shoot day, they're doing pretty well. That's good. I know it can go higher, but that's a pretty good number. Anything in excess of 1K for a lead for most people is a good number. I
yeah.
have seen castings go out for a base of 500 USD. That's pretty low. That's pretty low. If you're experienced, I would be pushing that, in my kind of professional opinion. But like I said, I'm not in the LA scene, so I don't want to speak outside my station too much there. But yeah, anything less than 500 USD for a lead would be a bit cooked, in my opinion.
Mm.
Very low, even if you're like not experienced.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, again, because again, these are like all usually greener actors than those that are have been established in the union. Um,
Yeah,
is there
and
any is
supporting is usually, sorry, I just realized I
no,
forgot
no,
to
please.
mention
Yeah,
supporting at all.
yeah.
So I apologize for that, but I think supporting is usually like 70%, maybe 80%. So if you're rocking a 500 lead and you get 400 for supporting, fair, I think.
Mm,
If the lead is sitting on 1K, you should be sitting around 800, maybe lowest 700. Um, Unless you are like a supporting with like 3 lines, then it's kind of like there is its own little hierarchy within supporting. I'm talking kind of like about a major villain, for
got you.
example, would be those numbers. But yeah, if you're around like 70-80% of the lead as supporting, that's generally acceptable. Sometimes supportings get paid more than the lead, but I think that the one thing I do want to kind of mention regarding rates is that everyone is unique. There is not a single rule book for you're worth this much, you're worth that much. You have to take into account like how valuable you are to production, how much production is willing to pay. I know leads that normally charge 1200, but then they get a project that they really like and they trust that production genuinely only can pay them say 800. And that's like a third of their rate that they have just chopped off,
Mm,
but they do it because they like the producer or they like the production, the story, they believe in it, things like that. And then there might be some other conditions that they negotiate in there as well that balance it out. But the really like the most important thing there is that these numbers are not reliable numbers. They will change, and
100%.
also people will change. What I am worth now in the market is not what I was worth 6 months ago. It's very different, for a number of different reasons. So don't take any of those numbers to heart, and don't yell at me if I'm wrong.
Do you have any advice for these young actors like who are sitting now on like $200,000 a year, like who are now like being able to like you know like it's
What
almost
advice in what
crazy,
respect? What am I
like
advising them on?
financial advice because I find
No, I
like
can't give financial
yeah,
advice.
okay,
I'm not allowed
this is
to.
not financial advice, but it's almost like I mean I
Oh.
can't believe how quickly you go from potentially nothing to making six figures in
Mm,
in this realm for some of these actors who are consistently making it. And coming out of like high school for some of them, it just must be crazy to now
it
have like I was
is.
talking to
Yeah.
Jameson, like she went from two jobs, and like trying to make ends meet to like now she's like extremely comfortable. Um like how do you deal with that? I mean, even for you when you started making this
Mm.
insane money, like what would you have told yourself? at the time when you first started getting these checks?
Yeah, I think it's this is not financial advice, just for legal reasons. I have to say that.
Mhm.
And I think how people spend their money is very much a personal thing. I bought some Pokemon cards,
Nice.
so this is my Pokemon card that I bought.
Oh man. And
Yeah,
those
I
hold
just really
value, I
love
think,
it.
right?
I think like, well, yeah, this it holds value. Typically, it appreciates. The Pokemon market's quite inflated right now, so whether it's an investment or not, I just bought it because I like it, and I
Mm.
I wanted to reward myself for like my hard effort. This card is worth, I think, in USD about 250.
250,000.
Um, yeah, no, just $250,
Oh,
not
200. Oh, okay. I was
not
like,
that,
I
bro.
was
How
like,
much
oh
do
my
you
god.
think I make? What,
Well,
bro?
I heard some of these Pokemon cards go for like $100,000 or
Yeah,
$200,000
but
a
those
bit.
those are the ones that were like made in that one was made in 2024.
Mm,
The ones you're talking about are the ones that were made in like 1999 when no one cared.
gotcha.
And the reason why they're so expensive is because there's a print error. It's called
Mm,
shadowless. So the print error on the very first print of the first set of Pokemon cards. So it's not just the first set; it is the first print of the first set, and then it's a particular
mm,
card in that base set shadowless Charizard. That in a PSA 10 or like a graded 10, which is the best condition that it can reasonably like be authenticated as, that's why that's so expensive, because the population of that is like double digits. It might, yeah, I think low double digits.
mm.
Whereas the population of the card I just showed you, meaning like the total amount of them that exist, is easily in several thousands.
Gotcha.
So that's why this one's 250 and those
Way,
ones are
way less. Okay.
250K. Yeah,
Gotcha.
very, very, very different.
Very, very,
Because
very
of that.
different.
Yeah, but I that's what I did with some of the money. Most of it I've just kind of invested in stocks and whatever, or left in the bank. Eventually, like I'll want to buy a house or something, but I'm just not
Mm,
quite there yet. Um, but in terms of the how I approached it, it wasn't, to me, like it wasn't anything that was like insane. It wasn't like I just immediately had $1 million,
yeah.
like just to put that in kind of perspective. But I would say don't lie about your taxes. I know a lot of actors that are doing that, and I just don't think that's a very good idea.
Oh no.
Um, don't do that. And yeah, if you're not sure what to do with it, speak to a financial advisor. I can't advise any specifics of what to buy or what not to buy.
No.
But yeah, I think that when you're young and when you're given a bunch of money, um, find someone you trust to help you figure that out. Because also, like everyone's different in their financial situation. Some people are earning 500K, some people are earning 100K, some people are earning 50K.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself, of course, and allow yourself your Pokemon card or whatever your thing that you enjoy is. Enjoy it, but definitely, I think it's worth planning for the future, because you never know what's going to happen with the
Totally.
industry. And this money is great today, but you never know what's going to happen next year, or maybe your look won't be as popular next year. Um,
Yeah,
you
that's
don't know.
that was my main concern with a lot of these. I mean, you spoke about actresses in general that the longevity is
Mm,
not there at the moment.
yeah.
Like, you're making so much money now. Um, especially when you're so young, the advice of going to a financial advisor, I think, is the best advice to go to,
Speak to someone who knows more
Yeah.
about what we're talking about than I do.
Yeah, like, just dump it in the S&P 500 and just like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, just don't
whatever you
even
want to,
touch it.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any like crazy like spend that you made besides the Pokemon cards when you started making some money?
I mean, I do have a lot of Pokemon cards, so I'd say
So it's
that
very,
would be
very much.
the
That's
most
awesome.
crazy spending. But no, actually, to level with you, the big benefit that I've been able to get from what I would what I would call this financial freedom within verticals is that my partner doesn't work anymore.
Wow.
So she's no longer employed, and she paints art,
Well,
like
that's
the art behind me.
incredible.
And she's kind of working through. This is only like a recent thing in the last couple of months that we've been working together, but we're both very creative people, and we were both in corporate. And I just lucked out on verticals, and that's kind of inspired her to pursue her creative passions, which I'm so excited for, and she is incredible as well. Um, and so that's actually probably been the biggest financial shift, is not so much that we went and spent a bunch, but rather that we kind of just rebalanced our finances and our kind of financial goals, and looked at, okay, well, what do we want to be doing with our life? And it kind of gave us that freedom of, I don't have to go into corporate. I don't have to kind of slave away to the 9 to 5.
Mm.
And it's given us that freedom to kind of explore those options. She's my partner also in the agency. So Rachel also works as a talent agent. We balance those depending on if I'm on set and shooting. Just she's kind of there, and we both are able to do that depending on our schedules. So we're in a partnership in that as well. But yeah, she's exploring her creative passions. She does sculpture. So she
Nice.
hits away at like a marble sculpture. Yesterday, she made a tiger with a soldering iron on a plank of wood,
Whoa.
with like shading. So she'd like burn the wood and then she'd carve little bits into it like a relief. It is magical, man. It is magical. I go to the gym, I come
Wow.
home, and there's just a fresh piece of art. It is actually crazy.
That's
So that's
amazing.
been the biggest adjustment, I think, from a financial perspective. Post verticals, I obviously got my Pokemon cards because I wanted them, but mostly it's more just been kind of rebalancing our day-to-day expenses.
So going to the agency that you have,
Mm.
what are things that you look for in clients, that maybe like, submitting to you or that you're looking for? What are some things that actors should keep in mind?
I think that professionalism is number one. Beyond all else, if you are perfect but you're not able to communicate with me, um, I don't really want to work with you. That's kind of like the biggest no-no that I have. And when I say professionalism, I'm talking just kind of like basic things of, read the information I have kind of publicly available before you contact me. If you don't do that, like it's not a big deal. And it's more kind of professionalism throughout our entire exchanges. Like if we set a meeting and you don't show up and you text me half an hour later saying you forgot, that's a big no-no. But basically, I as an agent, for the talent that I represent, I need to trust them,
Hmm.
and they need to trust me as well. And so we need to be able to have a working relationship. And if you kind of demonstrate through the submission process that we can't have a working relationship, then we're just not going to work together. A big no-no would be, I had a talent give me business advice on
Wow.
our meeting call. They were like, "Hey, you need to be licensed." And then they sent me this whole document about being licensed. And then the next day they emailed me being like, "Oh, actually, I was wrong. You don't need to have this particular license." And it was just this whole weird, I don't really know, but they kind of presented to me like they were my boss, and I was like, that's not how I operate. So for me, kind of the perfect relationship that I have with my talent is that we're partners, and that I want to promote you, I want you to be successful. You obviously, as a talent, if you want to work with me, you need to trust my judgment. And that doesn't mean that I get to order you around. I'm not the talent's boss. We are
Hmm.
partners. But it means that we need to kind of respect each other's opinion. And if we disagree on something, try to understand why, in a respectful manner without kind of attacking each other. So basic respect and professionalism, that's number one for me. In terms of what gives people kind of a plus in my book, I would say that if you have a show reel, for starters, great, amazing. If you don't have a show reel, you need to at least be able to show me a tape. Our agency, on our website, we have a submission kind of requirements, and I've written 4 vertical scripts, 4 like little self-tape scripts that are in a vertical style, because our agency is only for verticals. We're like
Hmm.
specialized in that respect. We don't submit to normal traditional stuff. But if you kind of submit to me, through that form, but you don't do a tape, it strikes me as someone who is kind of not really committed to being in this industry. And I may reply, I may check in, just be like, hey, like I saw a submission, are you able to do a tape? If you're not able to do a tape for me, or you're not able to show me a previous audition, I will not consider you for my agency. Because the idea of being an actor, typically the process goes casting asks us, or we even go to casting because we do management as well. So we'll just like promote some of our talent to casting producers before they even have a project. But casting will say at a certain point, they'll say, hey, I want to get a self tape from person A, person B, person C. We then send that to person A, B, and C. And we say, hey, casting's asked for an audition from you. We then have anywhere between, I don't know, 24 hours. Sometimes you get a week, but verticals are very quick. So sometimes turnaround is only 24 hours. We need to get your tape back. We send it to casting, and then the whole negotiation process goes through, whatever. If you can't get me a tape with no pressure, with no submission kind of like deadline, if you can't send me a tape, you don't want to be an actor. Put simply, right? You may think you want to be an actor, but you are not motivated to actually be an actor if you can't put down a tape with zero pressure. And when it comes to it, like if I give you pressure and I say, hey, you've got a deadline of 24 hours to get me this tape, that's not the time to learn how to do a self tape. It's not the time to buy a tripod, get some lights, find a clean background, get clean audio, learn a script. That is not the time to learn that. That's the time to perform that. So I'm not bothered by a new actor. I'm not bothered at all by someone who's never been in anything before, but you need to be willing, even if it's terrible, we can work on that. Even if it's terrible, you need to be willing to put down a tape. And you would be surprised at how many people refuse or delay to the extent that they just end up never doing it to actually do a tape.
Wow.
I do understand from a new perspective. Like, I remember my first self tape. It was so bad. It was so hard. It was so stressful. And so I've tried to make it as easy as possible by writing these vertical scripts. I've got YouTube videos on how to self-tape that I've linked in as well. I've got YouTube videos on character building, on script analysis, specifically for verticals as well. So I've tried to make it as easy as possible for someone who has never done a tape before to do their first kind of self-tape. And if it's bad, I don't even judge them for it. It's totally fine. Worst case, I give you some feedback. We do it again, and we see where we're at after that. But if you can't do a tape, that's I can't book you. It's you can't exist as an actor without auditioning. So that to me is kind of like a big tick or a cross. But besides that, I only represent Australian talent, so most of your audience may not really be able to benefit too much from this. But the most Australian talent who come to me, we're a much smaller industry, so this may change over time. But pretty much every single one of them who does a tape for me, I have a call with, unless there is a big reason not to. So I will say again, it is a much smaller industry. But if I can fit a couple of calls in a week, which is pretty much kind of the rate at which we're getting submissions. So for me at this point, I'm able to have that call. And if it doesn't work out, like I do love to kind of send talent to a particular area for independent kind of casting. Like Star Now and Facebook groups in Australia are the big ones. Backstage a little bit. But Star Now and Facebook groups are huge. And then in LA, you've got, I think Backstage is much bigger. Actors Access is a big one as well.
I think Actors Access is like the big one.
The main
I think Backstage
one,
has some, but it's definitely not like competitive with Actors Access.
Yeah. And then I think Canada is very similar, Actors Access, but it also, I was looking at Casting Workbook. Don't know much about Canada at all, but that was also one that I saw was happening. But yeah, those are kind of the main things that I look for.
But since verticals are so like, I mean, they shoot in Turkey, they shoot in China, like are you open to other countries' talent or just Australia as of now?
As of now, and I've discussed this with my partner a while, we do actually have a Canadian actress on our books. But that was because she's great. We had a call and she's very accomplished as well. So she was like a perfect submission, effectively. And she came to Australia, and so we started representing her for the Australian market and the Chinese market, and potentially like we might expand to representing her in other countries as well. But for now, it's kind of more that. The reason why we have stuck to the Australian market, Australia and China, but only representing actors in Australia, is because of the nature of which verticals are produced differently in each country,
Mm.
and the negotiation is different for each country. The visa status is different for each country, working rights, and all those kind of things. And to me, the reason why I got into representation was I never wanted to do it. It wasn't an intentional thing. Acting Vertical is the name of my agency, and it started off as an education platform. So I produced a bunch of YouTube content, a bunch of Instagram content, promoting the vertical space as a whole, and helping kind of connect talent with producers. And what ended up happening basically was we kind of transitioned from being an educational platform to I realized I could do more if I actually represented the talent, and I was able to govern or assist in kind of the negotiation between the producers or the casting and the talent themselves, and kind of guide talent a bit stronger there. So that's why we got into it. And I know the Australian market. I
Mm.
know, or I would say, like I have a very good understanding of the Chinese market. Can't speak Chinese, but from what it is to be an actor in that vertical market, I know it. I don't know LA. I don't
Mm.
know the producers in LA. I don't have kind of like solid contacts there. And so it kind of it's less about presenting talent with those options, and it's more about making sure that I'm not pretending to be doing something or providing value that I'm just not providing. Because to me, the agency is there to help. It is not there to just churn through money and jobs and things like that. It has a different kind of initial intention, which
Have
is
you
why Australian market is kind of where we're sitting.
have you noticed that more agencies have like do you notice that there's more agencies that are opening vertical divisions, or do you notice that there's more agencies that are
Yeah,
specifically only verticals?
there's as far as I'm aware, there's no agencies other than my own that are only verticals, and it's
Mm.
only agencies that exist that have opened a vertical department. I haven't heard of any that have opened fresh that are only doing verticals. That's
Mm.
I think I'm the only one doing that. It's mostly just a department. Yes, I'm aware of them. I've had a few calls myself with them as well to discuss either a partnership between my agency and theirs, or like representation for myself as an actor. Um, the I don't think it's a bad thing. I think
Mm.
it's a good thing. Um, I think the challenge becomes a lot of actors who sign to a vertical department of a big agency, they think that and kind of the assumed promise there is that, oh, I'm part of your vertical department, but maybe I'll get promoted or like noticed to get into your theatrical kind of like film and TV department. That isn't always going to be the case. The reason why the department is separated between casual film and TV, or sorry, traditional film and TV, and then kind of verticals is because those are separate, and they're
Mm.
using the same name and the same kind of like business concept, but those are they're not the same. And so I feel like the important thing to look at in those and the questions to ask in those interviews with the agents that are doing that is, what are you actually going to submit me for? Are we just having this conversation about verticals, or are we having this conversation about, I've done a bunch of stuff in verticals and now you're interested in me for film and TV as well, and you want to represent me for both? Because I think that it's really important for that to be clear. I'm not suggesting that it's a scam or anything in that respect, and I think it's wonderful that there is going to be more representation in the vertical space. I am a
Mm.
believer that agents typically know what they're doing, and there are kind of a lot of contract things such as the negotiation that talent can benefit having a representative for. I think agents are a wonderful and positive force in the industry, But it is important when a talent goes into that agreement that they understand what the agent is representing them for and what the conditions of that representation are. So just be wary of that to any talent who is getting contacted by those agencies. And if it is kind of like a good step for you to make, fantastic. And I'm really hopeful for the future of that. I think it's a good thing overall.
Hmm. Is there any other things that you want to discuss as well, or like things that you were like top of
I don't
mind?
even know what we haven't discussed. We've talked for so long.
I know, I feel like we've got everything.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so. The only thing we haven't discussed is independent verticals.
oh my, that was actually my question.
Those are
Thank
a
you so
really cool
much. Yeah,
thing
yeah, yeah.
happening. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? I saw this guy named Chad on Instagram. I forget his last name, but he's got like 70K. He's like a writer, and he's just like pushing in the States for every writer and for everybody to make their own verticals. Do you think this will be
Yeah.
successful?
Well, I hope so because I'm
Mm-hmm.
jumping on board that kind of
Or you're
vibe.
making, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got a series on Instagram, and it's very low budget, and we're getting away with a lot of stuff because it's an Instagram series, and no one is comparing it to Netflix. But it's been a really fun experience. We just released episode 10. So each of them is like only a minute long, but we're just making it up as we go and kind of playing to the fans, to the tropes. And it's been really just exciting and enjoyable to experience. Like, I am the camera operator, and I'm also on sound, and I'm also like on lighting, and I'm on kind of every aspect. I'm filming it on my phone. Like, we're like so under geared for this thing. But it's just been like a bit of fun using my knowledge of verticals to create a series that fans can enjoy. And we're not monetizing it at all at the moment. It's literally just posting and having fun. So we've made like a separate Instagram account for it. And I'm kind of using that as and I haven't actually mentioned this to many people yet, but I'm using this series we've called it The Duel. And I'm using The Duel as proof of concept for myself and my own confidence, but also it's going to be proof of concept for when I pitch to an actual producer for funding or for pitch to crew or even a director in the future for some projects that I'm writing,
Mm.
um, where hopefully we can do some kind of the same way that like indie feature films have been created for however long they've been around, which is a deferred profit share kind of concept. Those work really well if you have a proof of concept where you can say, hey, this is the kind of stuff I want to make. I've already kind of made a similar thing, and now I want to do it kind of on a bigger scale. So that's where I'm kind of using that Instagram series in terms of for the future. But I think that independent verticals are brilliant. I think that similar to what I was saying about Disney having less sorry, the same thing I was saying earlier about Disney having more creative risk potential because they have a less of a need for this project to be successful. It's not sink or swim for the entire company. I think that when it comes to an independent vertical, you don't have the voice of the platform saying need more shock or we
Mhm.
need more abuse or violence or looking at all those data metrics that say, oh, but this will be successful. When you produce something indie, you kind of get to make those creative choices. And if you make profit, great. If you don't, you're kind of like most of the people in that are there for the art form and are there to
Mm.
kind of push the creative limits of the format. And I feel like the vertical format is uh, largely untapped in its potential because it's so new and because it is like so quickly achieved a very strong stigma, and it is largely a negative stigma about the type of content it must be. There is nothing inherently like bad quality about shooting in like a 9:16 aspect ratio. There's
Mhm.
nothing inherently anything about that. Traditionally, when we're shooting in a 16:9 or like just a horizontal ratio, it's much easier to foreground left right movement. It's much easier to shoot like a landscape in a pan. it's really easy to kind of do that kind of movement. Whereas when you get to vertical, the shots that are more creative and the shots that are more impactful are the ones that suit up down movement. So if something
Mhm.
is falling, or if someone stands up, or if you're looking at like a height difference between two people, it is so much stronger and so much more impactful on a vertical frame. But these are
Mhm.
things that verticals haven't yet really explored. Some have, but on the whole in the industry, they haven't really explored it too much because there's such a like a tight timeline for all these projects. There's a very strong kind of creative direction coming from the platform that is driven by a bunch of data of, well, they did it this way and they were successful, so if we do it this way, we'll be successful. Um, and playing to that. But when you get to the indie space and you're able to do an independent vertical, you can make those decisions, you can have that experimentation, and everyone there is like, or pretty much everyone there is trying to make the project as cool as it possibly can be, as opposed to what's going to make the most money. And that's when you push
Mm.
the limits, and that's when you take the creative risks that become the classics or become the most beautiful parts of the industry. So that's my hope for indie verticals. That's why I'm getting into it. I think everyone should. I think it's a great thing.
Are you finding that you're having to use the same tropes in order to be successful, like the, best friend's sister's your crush, or the
Mm.
stepmother, or, stepfather's best friend?
Well, I haven't produced anything yet,
Mhm.
so I don't really have any data metrics to look at. I have
Gotcha.
written, and I haven't told anyone this actually. I've written like 12 scripts, like
Wow.
12 vertical. Some of them, like probably like four of them, I finished, but I've
Mhm.
got 8 of them where I've written up to the paywall or like the first like 4 or 5 episodes. But like 12 like unique script ideas. And when I started writing, I leaned very heavily into the tropes. And then
Mhm.
I gagged in my mouth and was like, no, I can't do this. Right. So I then kind of tried to write it again. And I felt myself kind of going back into the tropes again. And what I've tried to do, and it's yet to be seen, and you can kind of see some of this impact, I guess, in the Jewel series that I mentioned earlier. But what I'm trying to do is take some of the tropes, because the tropes do exist for a reason. It's not that someone randomly was like, I want to see overacting, and then overacting
Mhm.
just became a thing, right? I want to see a
Mhm.
soap opera. Like that wasn't something that someone randomly assigned. It was something that was tested and worked. So there is value in the tropes, and I don't want to completely ignore them because I think that that would be just
Mm.
wrong. But I want to take the tropes and actually justify them in the story, which has made writing it a little bit backwards because
Mhm.
I'm trying to match a story for a trope, and I'm kind of just hoping that it's going to work out. I don't have any proof yet that it will, but I'm hoping. But I'm definitely playing down the significance of the trope, and I'm not making the
Interesting.
story about the trope. I'm trying to make a story and then make sure that the trope fits into it like the last little piece of jigsaw
It
of a
makes
puzzle.
it makes sense because I mean, I've seen a few of the vertical series that aren't made by the big platforms independently, and the ones that I think don't quite hit the mark are the ones who are shooting it as if it's a horizontal project,
Yeah,
but vertically. Um,
yeah,
and it like to your point, like it's a different medium because it's a social media medium. You're competing with funny videos that are funny within the first 10 seconds or dramatic within the first 10 seconds. So if you're
10,
shooting
bro, 2.
two, yeah, 2 seconds.
Instagram's metric for a skip is 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've watched a few now that are trying to do it, and it's like these are they belong on like Netflix or a traditional kind of
Mm.
platform, like a traditional TV show or movie. So I definitely do think like whether it's adapting it to the trope or adapting it to the timeline of like 3 seconds, you have 3 seconds to grab their attention or they're gone.
I think I'm going to add to that and kind of develop that idea a bit further. Jen from Vertical Drama Love, she put out a post, I think yesterday or day before, about how verticals, the quality of content is just getting worse and worse and worse. And my comment on that is kind of to your point. The comment I put a comment on there, and then I put my comment on my story. because I was so like, this needs to be said.
Yeah.
But what I said was, there's nothing wrong with a vertical having a few clickbait hook episodes. That is fine, right? Because the whole idea of a vertical, in terms of the full process framework, is they put like a bunch of episodes on Instagram or pre-paywall, that kind of thing. That serves as lead generation or a funnel to bring people from Instagram onto their apps where they can monetize the
Mm,
series. That's how
that
it
makes
works
sense.
typically, right? And independent verticals be a bit different than that. But there's nothing wrong with having like 4 or 5 episodes that are just proper insanity in a 50 episode vertical, because that then leaves 90% of the vertical for like genuinely good storytelling. There's nothing wrong with having that mix. And then the ads that you show, you just carefully select the 4 or 5 episodes that are genuinely insane. And then you have like 45 remaining episodes to justify why those 5 episodes were insane. You could have them as like a 2 or 3 bunch and then a 1-2 bunch, or you could have them as kind of like spaced out between, or even just the first 5 episodes are proper insanity and the rest of the vertical we're just trying to figure out what happened. There is a way to work that in. And if you're able to match that social media hook lead gen kind of success
Hmm.
metric, because they don't put the whole vertical on social media in the ads. They're only doing ads for 4 or 5 episodes, maybe even less. So you use that as your big hook, and then the rest of the vertical you can have as proper storytelling. Now, this is not a new idea. This is something the platforms have already recognized. But unfortunately, in recognizing it, they've taken kind of a different logical step. And the
Hmm.
general kind of commentary is, let's focus on all the episodes before the paywall. And they'll put like 60% of the budget into the first like 5-10 episodes, and then the remaining 40% of the budget goes into the remaining like 40 episodes. Which then
Yes.
what happens is they bring people in really like shocking, and then the vertical is nothing what you thought it would be, which leaves viewers just feeling a bit kind of like annoyed.
Yeah.
So I think the big challenge is trying to hit those aggressive hooks and intense episodes. Those can be in there because movies have intense moments. Cinema like has intense moments, but then justifying them in the story for the rest of it, or even beforehand, wherever that episode fits in the story. That's what's going to, I think, separate. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah, that's what I'm focusing on my 12th iteration of a completely. Every time it's like a completely different story as well. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that everyone should get into indie verticals because it's just cool, and
Yeah.
you get to rewrite like the rule book.
And the
It's
other
like
thing too
all
is
shots that exist that they're done for horizontal. It's great.
I mean, having been on a set, like the even if you wanted to shoot it like how they shoot it, like the traditional, like the drama box real short, like it's not as expensive as traditional horizontal. Like you're having like FX30s or like FX3s that they're using, which are like very affordable cameras. Like the lighting setups are not super complex. Like sure the locations might cost you money, but if you're like very economical with like, oh, I have this location at a friend's house, or like my friend owns like a coffee shop, you can shoot it pretty close to what they're shooting, um, their crazy budgeted vertical. I have two more questions, and this one might be personal. If you want to skip it, totally okay. Um, the nature of these verticals, I'm imagining all 40 you've done have been
I
very
know where this is going.
steamy. Yeah, I'm sure.
As soon as you said the nature of these
Yeah,
verticals, I was
yeah.
like, yep,
I'm gonna
yeah.
ask it.
More than happy to answer. More than happy to answer. Yeah.
You might honestly might go different from what you're thinking, but being someone in a relationship, uh,
That's exactly where I thought this was going. Yeah.
yeah, how does that impact your relationship? As
Mm.
you know, I'm imagining it's 40 different actresses with that you're acting with, and they're all very explicit scenes. At least the ones that I've seen.
Yep.
How is your relationship with that? How do you guys um, deal with that?
I think number one for us is communication. And I know that this is kind of like the classic response. It's classic because it works. Full like transparency of, hey, this is the gig. This is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing. Uh, is this something you're okay with? And is there a boundary you want me to put up? So as an actor, like all actors, actresses, talent, we have personal boundaries. There are things that we're okay with doing on camera. Some actresses, for example, are okay being topless on camera. Not that that happens in verticals. Some actors are okay with being like butt naked. I'm not. So I'm
Mm.
okay with having my shirt off, but I don't want to have kind of like any explicit visuals of my front or back in that kind of area, that lower area. So that's my personal boundary. But when it comes to these scenes, and this is also another reason why I'm so strong in my contracts of before I sign, tell me my intimacy and stunt requirements, because then I can take those intimacy and stunt requirements and I can say to my partner, hey, this is kind of what they're asking. How do you feel about that? And
Mm.
generally, the answer is not, "Yay, go for it." Like that's not how
Yeah,
the
yeah.
conversation goes at all. It is kind of again another negotiation. It is oh, well, do we really have to do that particular thing? Is there would they be open to doing this thing? And it might be that my boundary is it works and it doesn't work for my partner's boundary. It might be the other way around. It might be that my partner's okay with it and I'm like, but I'm not.
Mm.
So we kind of throughout all of these verticals from the very beginning, and it was especially important in the beginning because at this point I've done everything and I have a very good. I shouldn't say I've done everything, but I have a pretty good gauge. We've had most of the conversations that should be had of is it okay if this happens or is it okay that that happens? No, yes, yes, no, that kind of thing. So I've got a pretty good gauge by now. We've kind of crossed most bridges, but even
Mhm.
so, it is still like a respectful thing at this stage for me to say to my partner, hey, this is the gig. How do you feel about it? Generally speaking, at this point, it's like the response I usually get is there anything different than we've already kind of discussed and done before? And
Mhm.
usually at this point, the answer is no. There might be a small thing, but that's kind of that's the way the conversation goes. But all in all, I am very lucky, very very lucky that my partner is so understanding. This is not a normal career path. It is very rare for you to say to your partner, "Hey, can I like kiss someone else? Would you be would you allow me to do that? It's for money."
Mhm.
That's a weird thing to ask. So I'm very grateful that my partner is chill in that respect. In the beginning, it was a lot harder and a lot more stressful. And I do remember there was like a moment where there was a particular, and I won't go into details, but there was a particular interaction that occurred from an actress, and that interaction made my partner very uncomfortable. And then I kind of from that point, that particular actress and how I interact with them has changed. And those are the kind of like tough conversations that you sometimes have to have.
Mhm.
And it's definitely a work of priority. And making sure my partner is comfortable is very important to me. Um, the career, like there will be another gig and there will be another thing that pops up. And so if there is like a big reason as to why I shouldn't be doing a particular thing and production is not willing to negotiate on that, then there have been times where I've had to say no to
Mhm.
the project for that reason. But it's also like it's a very tough thing, and my talent have sometimes been in similar situations. And without wanting to divulge any kind of personal details of my talent either, um, there have been some cases where their partner has not been okay with it, and that's kind of a conversation decision for the talent to make as well. Of well, how are you kind of sitting with this? Do you think that this is going to be a long term thing? And that I think that it's been a bit easier on my side because I feel like in general, the actor has a bit more control on set over what happens. And I think
Mhm.
from my experience, from what I've heard, actresses are sometimes not taken as seriously, and they get put through like some crazy stuff on these
Crazy.
vertical sets. And when they kind of raise their voice a little bit to express that they're not comfortable, they're not okay with something, they're often kind of just patted down. I say often, it's not often, but sometimes I should say they're sometimes kind of patted down, like, oh, it's okay, we'll just do it anyway. Whereas I feel like when a guy stands up on set and says, no, I'm not doing this, 99% of the time, it's just accepted, and that's fine. So I think from my perspective, my partner also has the confidence that like I've been through enough of these series that I kind of can just say no to something that comes up last second that I know she wouldn't be comfortable with. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how we roll with it. It's a bit of luck that we're both kind of on board what this is, and my partner supports my career, which again is like something that I absolutely do not take for granted. I'm very grateful for. But all in all, just constant open communication, especially in those first couple of times, because those are where those big conversations of there are like a lot of ways to be intimate with someone else. Like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't think it, but there's a lot of things that they can ask you, and it's nearly impossible for me to sit there with a checklist with my partner being like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's very much as things come up, it's like okay, how do you feel about this? A good example was tongue.
Tongue.
Tongue is like something that we have on the list of unless it's absolutely necessary for the story, which I honestly can't come up with a reason it would be. That's a no. That's just there's no need for it. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Do you mean like
And if they
tongue
push for it, I can
like a
just
French kiss kind of thing, or
yeah,
like?
like tongue like going down the throat kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. If it's just
Gotcha.
like if it's a lick of the ear, I don't know why they would do that, but if there's a lick of the ear, that probably would be fine. To kind of just to put some examples in the context of it, because I feel
Yeah.
like I've been very broad with what I've been saying there. I just don't feel like the specifics are too.
No, no. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, these things are very personal, and it's like up
Mm,
to each person and their partner what they deem, you know, acceptable. So
yeah.
just hearing it from your perspective of like what it must be like, given how many of these you've done, given the life of a lead vertical male actor, having
Most of them out
to,
of the country as well, which really does add to the stress, I think.
and the fact that, you're usually in the same hotel together, like you usually all your scenes are together. I could see it definitely causing issues in a relationship. So it's nice to hear that, open, clear communication has been the solve for you
Oh,
guys.
I'm very lucky though. Like open, clear
Yeah.
communication is what you can do about it. But having a partner that's as supportive as mine, she's rare. She's very rare. So I'm very, very lucky in that respect.
The last question I was going to ask is as it pertains with SAG and the union getting involved. Um, how do you think this will affect the male, female lead vertical actors, or just vertical actors in general? Because I imagine if, let's say, the union does get involved and they're able to make a deal with Drama Box and Real Short and all these vertical companies, and they're able to get the actors with the following and the name evolved to these projects, do you think it'll be a big market disruptor for the vertical actors as they are now? Or do you think that the vertical actors have established themselves so much that they would be able to compete with, you know, in my eyes, like the CW talent out of America, like the Vampire Diaries actors? Obviously,
Mm.
those are a little bit past, but like the Riverdales and the things like that.
Yeah, I think the beauty of verticals is that they have too low of a budget for most A-listers to jump in. So maybe it could be a budget that's suitable for an actor who's done a series like Riverdale, or that kind of thing. And I don't think that there is so much of a divide between cinema actors or CW actors versus vertical actors. I
Mhm.
think it's a similar divide between theater actors and screen actors, and we're all actors at the end of the day. And I think that is kind of like an important thing there. I think that if someone wants to start a vertical, if someone wants to do a vertical, whether they are an accomplished like A-lister or Hollywood B-lister or someone who's like really up there, a household name in some areas, like if they want to do a vertical, I'm all for it. I think that's great, right? And I don't think that just because you've done 20 or 10 or 100 verticals already, I don't think that entitles you to kind of taking any position against that, because I think that verticals are a space that I really love and I believe that everyone kind of has a place in. But in terms of how it would disrupt the market, I think it can only cause benefit. And the reason why I believe that is because when you take a big name and you attach it to verticals, as you mentioned, I've forgotten his name already. The guy you mentioned,
Yeah,
it's
I Taylor Ty Diggs.
Diggs.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize. I should know that name. As
No,
soon
I
as you
should
say
too.
it, I know it. I
Yeah.
don't have it committed to memory. But to get an actor like of their caliber and of their status jumping on verticals, what it does is it legitimizes verticals as a space, and it directly contradicts the negative stigma around verticals, because these are people whose opinion is respected in the film community. Where there is a divide between like the film community and the vertical community, these people's opinions and experience in film matters to the people in film, to like the industry people. And so when you get them in verticals, they then have an empathy and an understanding of the process that it is to shoot a vertical and to act in a vertical. And they can then kind of take that information to the people in the film community that respect their opinion and that appreciate their kind of value. And I do strongly believe that they will say, well, look, man, like the story was a bit odd and not what I'm used to, but wow, these people work fast. They work hard. And like they're doing all of this cool stuff. And they'll really be able to kind of take that positive aspect of what it is to be working in this space and bring it to the rest of the film community. And it's going to bridge the gap. I hope, I think, right? Because then you'll get more people from film jumping on verticals. They'll bring people from verticals into film, and you'll just get that kind of like cross connection where it's no longer two different communities. It's the same difference as like a movie versus a TV series versus a vertical. And it'll just be kind of like another, and I don't mean to order those top to bottom, but it'll just be another aspect of filmmaking. And I think verticals will start being called vertical films, or something like that, maybe. Who knows? But I think it's going to be good for all of us, because the more that stigma is broken down, that really strong negative stigma of, like you mentioned at the very, very beginning of this call, the phrase borderline soft pornographic. That is a very bad stigma to have attached to your name in an industry that is all about reputation, and where people get hired or not hired because of positive or negative reputation. So bringing people in to legitimize the industry, to remove that negative stigma, I think is a net positive for everyone. And it can only really lead to more projects. And if there's more projects, there's more jobs and more things for people to do. So overall, it's a wonderful thing. I don't know exactly how it'll work in terms of rates, in terms of how those will go. It'll probably just end up causing like a much bigger tiered system, where you'll have kind of the low rates, the medium rates, the high rates, and then the obscene kind of rates. But yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because I think now we're at a part of the industry where things are shifting, and you're having a lot of these people who have done series begin to be like unemployed, or they're not working. And I feel like bringing them into the vertical market, like you said, would legitimize them. And I think also a lot of people would love to jump in. I think
a lot of crew already has.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to be credited, and they do it. I mean, some actors do it, but it's a lot harder as an actor to pretend like you're not involved in something when your face is right there. But a lot of crew, because they're behind the camera, they can. And a lot of them have jumped from like film. And the beauty of that, what I've actually seen on those sets, is they're teaching. They're teaching on set. And sometimes like it's annoying for them, because like it's not that hard to do. But they'll be like, it'll be like a, I don't know, 50-year-old experienced film person, and then like a 20-year-old just come out of film school, or like still in film school, and they'll be working together. And I've seen them just teach and pass on knowledge and experience. And not only that, then the 20-year-old now has this like connection with this like pretty well connected person who's like been in film for ages. They can ask advice, and then they come like, maybe like this is kind of like a very optimistic version of what actually happens, but then they become kind of like a mentor. And then that's some
100%.
great industry kind of info you have. So you
100%.
build that connection. It's fantastic. So a lot of crews already done it. They just don't like talking about it because of the negative stigma. But from an actor's perspective, that's just going to be the final kind of cherry on top of the cake. It's going to be fantastic, I think.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, that was a great conversation, and we hit 3 hours.
Whew.
Woo, that was a marathon.
Whew.
But I feel like we covered pretty much everything.
I think we did. No, I
yeah.
enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you taking the time as well. Thank you for having me on.